Good evening, and welcome to tonight's Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. Let me introduce the members of town government that assist this board. To my left is Simone Vogany, Assistant Town Attorney. To her left is Blaise Donadio, a planner in the Planning Department. We're all here tonight seeking relief from the Smithtown zoning ordinances, and it's our job to try to help you achieve the relief you are requesting whenever possible. It's up to you to provide this board with precise and accurate information so we can make a decision based on the facts presented. This board must consider the five area variance considerations in order to render a decision, and they are as follows. They're also posted up here. Number one, whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the variance. Number two, whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than the area variance. Number three, whether the requested area variance is substantial. Number four, whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. And number five, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created. Procedures for tonight's meeting. Cases will be called in the order they are advertised. When you are called, please present your certificates of postings and mailing to Mr. Donadio if you haven't done so already. Then you'll be asked to go to the podium where you'll state your name and address for the record, and then proceed to tell us why you need your variance. At the end of your presentation, if anyone in the audience would like to speak on your case, they will be given one opportunity to do so. Then the applicant can go back to the podium to answer their concerns. Once the public hearing is closed, no further information will be accepted concerning this case. There are two ways to find out about your case. You can call the planning office tomorrow after 12 p.m., or you can wait and be notified by mail. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first case on the agenda is case number 19034, Safe Light Auto Glass, 799 Middle Country Road, St. James. The location of the property is the north side of Middle Country Road, 327 feet west of Astor Avenue. The property is split-zoned WSI and R21. The applicant is requesting a modification of a special exception use for repair garages, variance to reduce the minimum required parking from 64 to 47 spaces for proposed interior alterations and expansion into an adjacent tenant space with a new overhead door.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the town board. My name is John Zolo, office of 12 Manor Road, Smithtown, New York. On behalf of the applicant, Safe Light, I will endeavor to be brief. I know that Planning Department has prepared a planning advisory report, which is dated December 10, 2023, which is a corrected one that was prepared, I believe, by Blaise Donadio. And I would, I'll make reference to that during the course of the hearing. So this is an application for Safe Light Auto Glass. Some of you might know where it is. It's located, the current location is 797 Middle Country Road. It's a strip center over there, and they're looking to expand into one of the vacant spaces there. The property is split zoned, WSI and R21. Suffolk County tax map number is 110-4-8-4. Safe Light currently operates at the adjoining tenant space with an address of 797 Middle Country Road. They have had a lease for that current premises for approximately 20 years. The application is requesting the modification of the special exception use for a repair garage. We are seeking a variance to reduce the minimum required parking from 64 to 47 spaces. Safe Light will be making interior alterations and expanding into the adjacent tenant space to the east and installing a new overhead door. I have just a rendering here which shows you the way the front of the shopping center will look, and they're going to be putting in a garage door there to allow the vehicles to come around the back of the building and then exit out to the front. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to review the planning advisory report, but I have. I would ask that the entire report be submitted and considered as part of this hearing and made part of the record. As indicated in the report, the application is to expand one of the existing repair garages into the adjacent vacant space with interior alterations and provide for a front overhead garage door. The tenant will still be Safelite Auto Glass. Nothing will change about the operation, it's just expanding into that space. As set forth in the Planning Advisory Report, and I would ask, again, that's part of the record here, the application meets all the 13 general standards for special exception permits pursuant to the Town Code Section 322-94G, as well as the 8 special criteria exceptions under Section 322-82C, subparagraph 14. The property was the subject of a previous BZA application in 2011 under case number 16441. The application was approved with conditions by decision dated December 15, 2011. That was to allow for 2 repair garages with a 3rd tenant space, not to exceed the parking requirement of 1 per 250. The proposed use of a tenant space for Safelite meets that condition, as the expansion of the Safelite repair garage will only require 1 parking spot for 250 square feet. There is a request to reduce the parking. The site was previously approved for reduction in parking from 63 parking stalls required to 54 spaces for the 3 separate tenant spaces. All we're asking for from this board this evening is to be able to expand Safelite into the additional tenant space that is currently vacant, including 1 additional repair bay, and create a larger customer waiting area and storage areas. I have Mr. Ted Wicks who's the store manager from Safelite. He'll just explain to you what the additional space will be used for and how it will affect the number of customers coming, and just basically the day-to-day operations of the business at Safelite. Keeping in mind that Safelite's been there for approximately 20 years at the current location, and the business operation is not going to change as a result of this modification to the site. Mr. Wicks will testify that the expansion into additional space, they only expect to have 6 additional customers per day, 3 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon. They currently have 3 bays at the location. This bay will make the 4th bay, and he will explain to you what this bay predominantly will be used for. He will also explain to you the day-to-day operations of the business, including a description of how the 9 mobile units work off at the site and how they come to the site in the morning, pick up their material, and then move off to do repairs off-site. Based upon the current use of the property and the proposed expansion of the same use, it's submitted that the application meets all of the 5 criteria as set forth in the town law. It is also submitted that based upon the current use of the property, along with the proposed expansion of the same use, the request for reduction of parking is not significant. So at this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Ted Wicks from Safelite to come up, and I'll have him put on the roll and ask him some questions about the business and the use. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Ted Wicks from Safelite. Address is 799 Middle Country Road, St. James, and I'm presently the store manager. I've been there for 5 years. I've been with the company for 7.5.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, just your current job title,
Store manager.
and how long have you held the position of store manager?
7.5 years, but 5 years in St. James.
And what are the current hours of operation of Safelite at the St. James location?
8 to 5, Monday through Saturday. We're closed Sundays.
How many employees are currently at the St. James location?
Including myself, 17.
And out of those 17, how many of those are the tech drivers?
At any given time, well, there's 14 techs that would drive. At any given time, there's probably, we need 6 parking spots, 3 for the office people, including me, and then 3 presently for the techs in the shop. Sometimes we go to 7, but generally it's 6. The rest of the techs pick up their merchandise, the windshield, and leave for the day. So they're only there probably 30, 45 minutes. They don't take up any parking, and they don't come back generally during the day. There's no reason till they just come back the
And
next
how many
day.
mobile tech units do you have currently?
14.
How many of those use the vans that come back, come pick up the material, then leave.
Well, 14, but they have days off
How
during the
many-
week.
How many of the techs come to the site, pick up the material with the vans, and then leave?
Generally 9 a day.
And do they ever use that parking lot for those vehicles?
Generally, no. There's no reason to. They take them home.
Could you explain to the board what the purpose of the expansion into that, for the additional bay is?
We'll be able to add 6 jobs, but also with the new safety systems in cars, we have to do calibrations inside the shop, and we really need the space. The old shop, you have to back cars in and out. With the new shop, we'll be able to just pull them in, do the calibrations, and pull them right out after they put the windshields in. So it's going to be a time saver for us, and it won't be jockeying cars around.
So how many additional cars do you think you'll be able to do with the new bay on a daily basis?
6, but we'll just be a little more efficient.
Would that be 3 in the afternoon, 3 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon?
Correct.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Wicks while he's here with respect to the operation of the facility and the expansion, what the purpose of the expansion is for?
I just have a clarification. One of the neighbors wrote a letter. I don't think that neighbor is here tonight. Okay. Oh, well, the other neighbor. And I think they were concerned about expansion. You're not expanding the building. The building is staying exactly the same as it is. You're just doing interior renovations.
Correct.
So the footprint's not changing.
Footprint's not changing. The only thing that's changing is the front will have that overhead garage door, and the vehicles enter from the back, and the 2 other bays,
Mhm.
they come through the back, and they have to go out through the back. So this
Right.
will be a little more efficient for running of the business, but no, we're not changing the footprint at all, nothing. It's all interior alteration.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And one of the things I'd like to just mention, thank you, is that in the corrected planning advisory report, there were 2 criteria that were set forth and conditions from the case number 16441, which, if assuming that this board is inclined to grant this application, obviously would be willing, we understand those conditions, and we will take care of those items. It had to do with lighting shall be brought into compliance with the zoning ordinance, and the applicant shall plant and maintain type 2 plantings in the buffer. So that wasn't done, it hasn't been done, but it will be done if this board is so inclined to grant the relief requested. Unless you have any other questions for me, I thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
Planning?
Just a couple of comments, Mr. Chairman. As Mr. Zollo stated, did provide a planning advisory report to the board members. We did review the application, and upon review, we did recommend a conditional approval. As Mr. Zollo stated, there were 2 specific conditions in RPAR. However, I just want the board to remind the board that the site was previously approved under a prior BZA application for the special exception for the 2 existing repair garages, and any conditions of approval that were placed on the application at that time are still in effect today. The application, if approved by the board, would be required to go to the Board of Site Plan Review, I believe for an exemption, so they still would be subject to the conditions that the board previously imposed on them.
Thank you.
And we understand that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Come on up, please. Good evening.
I am the wife of Robert Frenna, Lisa Frenna.
All right, could you just state your name, spell your last name so we get it correct on the record?
Sure.
And give your address, please.
Okay, it's Lisa, Frenna.
Okay?
Okay. We take exception to everything they want. They work at all hours of the night, 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. They put the glass into an empty dumpster, which makes all kinds of noise. Their lighting looks like a train is coming through my house. They park in the back all the time. Here's a picture. Whereas they're not even supposed to be back there parking. And that's a picture from the other day. If they intend to put a buffer, they should have done that a long time ago when they agreed to do it. We've lived there 27 years. Tony, I think you've lived there 29 or 30. And it just gets louder, lighter, and more obtrusive. And if this doesn't suit their needs, they maybe should be looking at another space.
Okay.
And that's about it.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Sir, come on up. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Anthony Nicoletti. I live directly behind the store in question, 8 Hope Place. I don't have anything, I have no objection to advancing their business. The main concern I have is the noise, and it's got to be a few years now. All hours of the night, 2, 3, 4 in the morning, in that window. Not every night, but I'd say 2, 3 nights a week. It's hard to sleep. And my bedroom window is probably 150 feet from the building. And I guess that noise is taking back discarding the windshields and throwing them into dumpsters. It's extremely loud. It's unbelievable. So it's hard to sleep. So that's my main objection. So I'm not sure if the trailers are yours.
No, excuse me.
Oh.
Address the board.
Yes.
No.
Oh, there's some other equipment on that site. I'm not sure if it belongs to Safe Light or the next, the adjacent tenant in that building. Very obtrusive looking, very high, above the 6-foot fence that we have. It looks more like a junkyard, to be honest with you. I didn't bring photos. But my main concern is the noise.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. John, 1 second, please. Is there anyone else like to be heard on this application? No? Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Safe Light only operates from 8 to 5. But Mr. Wicks said they do pick up material, so we'll have to look into that. This is the first that Mr. Wicks has heard of this, so we'll look into that. And obviously, Safe Light wants to be a good neighbor. And with respect to that trailer, that's not Safe Light's trailer. That's the other tenant's trailer. So to the extent that there is a trailer there, it's not Safe Light's. But Safe Light wants to be a good neighbor. They've been there for 20 years. We want to stay there, and that's the reason why they're seeking this addition, alteration of the interior, is to continue the business over there. But again, if there's any problems, they can call Mr. Wicks during the day, and we'll address them. And Mr. Wicks also said he'll check with anyone who picks up the material from the site, find out what hours they're doing there. But Mr. Wicks said to me that he's been there for about 6 years as a store manager, that never had any complaints about noise. But we'll look into it. And again, we apologize if it's coming from our site, but it might not be. But either way, we'll take care of it, we'll look into it and address it.
All right, thank you. Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Thank you. You too.
The next case on the agenda, case number 19035, Julio Gaspar, 39 Garrick Street, Comac. The location of the property, the north side of Garrick Street, 243 feet west of Old Indian Head Road. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting variances to decrease the minimum distance from any lot line from 6 feet to 3 feet for an existing 96-square-foot shed, to increase the maximum permitted paved surface in the front yard from 25% to 40%, and to increase the maximum permitted paved surface in the side yard from 25% to 67% for an existing asphalt driveway.
Good evening.
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Vincent Tremarco. I represent the applicant. I've submitted the affidavits of posting and mailing to Mr. Donadio. This property was purchased recently by my clients, and all of the existing improvements which we're asking this board for a variance existed at the time they purchased the home. I've got to say it's very difficult for a homeowner to detect at least 2 out of the 3 required, if you will, violations, that being the 25% rule on the side of the house and in the front yard. It's a difficult thing for anybody to perceive, let alone require the sellers of the property, when you're in the contract, to even know what's wrong, if you will, with the excessive pavement. As you can see, the property is only 75 feet wide, and to get to the garage in the rear, you need a driveway. That driveway takes up a substantial part of the side yard. And also, the front yard paving, again, because it's a 75-foot wide lot, you have the problem of it being more than 25% with paving. There doesn't appear to be any type of drainage situation. The water is contained on the property. With respect to the shed, again, the shed is all the way in the rear. We don't think it would have any effect on the neighbors, so it wouldn't be an impact on adjacent properties. The variance is really not substantial when you consider the size of the lot and the locations of the paving and the shed, which is all the way in the back. Whether the benefit can be achieved by an alternative, I guess you could cut down the driveway, but I don't think that's going to help at all. You'd still have to have most of that driveway just to get to the back. Whether the variance would have an adverse effect on the environment, there doesn't appear to be any environmental issues with respect to drainage, which could be the only question that the board might have, and whether the difficult was created by the applicant or a former owner. Well, it was created by a former owner. Most buyers are not sophisticated enough to perceive these type of effects with the town ordinances. So we ask the board for its favorable consideration. If you have any questions, I'm here, and my clients are also here.
On the survey that I'm looking at, on the front yard by the Indian Head Road side, there's a shed. It says to be removed. Is that going to be removed?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. Is there anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
Planning?
No, thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Thank you.
The next case on the agenda is case number 19036, Eric Munch, 23 Gardenia Drive, Comac. The location of the property is the northeast corner of Gardenia Drive and Daisy Lane. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum front yard setback from 40 feet to 9 feet on Daisy Lane for an existing 120-square-foot shed, to reduce the setback from the front lot line from 10 feet to 5 feet on Daisy Lane for an existing 6-foot wooden fence.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Michael Arado, representing the owners at 23 Gardenia Drive. I submitted all the paperwork earlier to the town, the power of attorney, all the affidavits. You have them, right?
Right. Can you just spell your last name so we get it correct, please?
It's Arato. First name is Michael.
Thank you.
So we're here today asking for relief to leave a 6-foot fence and shed on a secondary front yard where the setbacks don't meet the current zoning standards. The shed is currently 9 feet from Daisy Lane, where 40 feet is required. The shed is 45 feet from Gardenia Drive. This house is on a corner lot. Owner wasn't aware that he had 2 front yards when he placed the shed in its location. The shed isn't encroaching on any other property. It's not oversized in size or height, and it doesn't have any impact on any of the neighbors' properties. Shed is strictly used for storage. Shed is behind a fence line, doesn't hinder the sight of any oncoming traffic from either street. With regards to the fence is less than 10 feet from the property line. However, the fence is more than 10 feet. It's averaged about 12 and a half feet from the curb line. The fence starts out at 9 feet from the property line, and its shortest distance, for which you called out for 5 feet, is from the property line is furthest away from Gardena Drive. The fence doesn't impair the sight view from either street. This house has an above-ground pool, as you can see, in the backyard, so this fence is what's enclosing the property line and, for safety purposes for the pool enclosure. Code requirements, having the fence like this is not uncharacteristic for a corner lot. I have some pictures here I took, if you want to see how the fence is, sight of view.
Thank you.
In addition, as per your Suffolk County GIS viewer, it appears this fence and shed have been in existence since 2004. Looks like the pool first appeared in sometime in 2007. None of the neighbors, as far as I know, have reached out to us in opposition of this application.
All right, thank you. Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
Planning?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Do you have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good holiday.
You too. Thank you.
The next case on the agenda, case number 19038, Louis Van Den Essen, 18 Bonnie Drive, Fort Salonga. The location of the property is the east side of Bonnie Drive, 1,461 feet north of Fort Salonga Road. The property is zoned R43. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum front yard setback from 60 feet to 50 feet for a proposed 100 square foot front roof over porch. To reduce the minimum side yard setback from 24 feet to 12 feet for an existing 153 square foot shed with roof over bar.
Good evening.
Good evening, how are you? Happy holidays.
Same to you. Can you state your name and address, please, for the record?
Yes, it's Louis Van Den Essen. That's VanDenEssen, and I'm the owner of 18 Bonnie Drive in Fort Salonga.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And you are here tonight because?
I'm here tonight to ask for a variance for a proposed 100 square foot front roof. I don't know if you have the architectural design. We're just adding a front roof to the right side. We have no roof line currently, and actually, we have to replace our roof after Saturday. So if we're going to redo the roof, my wife asked that we put columns and makes it look a little bit nicer. The second thing I'm here for is the proposed 12-foot from the fence shed. Is that? Yep. And that's, guess I need a variance for that.
Okay, that's from 24 to 12.
Yes, that's correct.
Right there. Okay. All right, thank you. Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
Planning?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Thank you.
Have a good one.
You too now.
The next case on the agenda is case number 19039, Nick and Laura Lamena, 283 Lilac Lane, Smithtown. The location of the property is the south side of Lilac Lane, 1,709 feet west of Brookside Drive. The property is zoned R21. The applicant is requesting a variance to reduce the total side yard requirement from 34 feet to 27 feet for a proposed 449 square foot, one-story addition.
Good evening.
Good evening to the board. How you doing? Happy holidays. My name is Nicholas Lamena, L-A-M-A-I-N-A. I'm the owner of 283 Lilac Lane. We're here tonight to request a variance to add this den onto our home. Due to it being one of the original bungalow houses in our neighborhood, it's kind of lacking in some square footage, so we're trying to add a den on for me and my family. As you can see, it's reducing it from 34 to 27 feet due to essentially an existing garage that was built in 2004 by the previous owner. So that's why we're here.
Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
Planning?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried.
Thank you very much.
The next case on the agenda is case number 19040, the Mildred Trust. The location of the property is the south side of Mildred Court, 150 feet east of Alexander Avenue. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting a variance to permit environmentally sensitive lands to be altered where depth to groundwater is equal to or less than 10 feet for an existing 186 square foot second floor rear addition on a pier platform.
Good
Sorry,
evening.
foundation.
Good evening. My name is Keith Archer, Harris Bloom and Archer, 445 Broad Hollow Road in Melville, representing the applicant. And as was mentioned, this is a request for a variance, really just of the town's regulations regarding environmentally sensitive land. There's nothing new that's being constructed. What occurred was that there was a second-story addition of 185 square feet added without the benefit of a permit. So the applicant, Property of the Trust, has retained an architect. We've submitted plans to the building department. Nothing is going to change except perhaps, some shoring up based upon the review of the plans by the building department. It's basically a second-story addition of 185 square feet for a bedroom. I don't think we could say that this would have any impact on the community. It's already there. And obviously, because the depth of groundwater can't be changed, there was nothing you could do about mitigating that. So in any event, the request is simply for the variance to allow this to remain, and then we'll proceed with the building department.
Okay. Because of the depth of groundwater, that's why it was built on piers,
Correct.
right?
And the architect is here if there are any questions, Mr. Chairman.
No, it's not necessary.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
Planning?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? No. Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too.
The next case on the agenda is case number 19041, Joseph Fontana. The location of the property is on Lakeview Drive in Kings Park. The location is the east side of Lakeview Drive, 400 Tulip Drive. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum lot area from 10,000 square feet to 8,090 square feet due to environmentally sensitive lands, steep slopes greater than 15%. The actual lot area is approximately 14,000 square feet. To increase the maximum gross floor area of the lot from 30% to 41%. To permit environmentally sensitive lands to be altered for slopes greater than 15%. To permit construction within 10 feet of any slope greater than 25%. To increase the gross floor area of the lot within the LWRP from 2,023 square feet to 3,262 square feet for a proposed 3,009 square foot single-family home with 253 square foot garage under.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Board. My name is Joseph Fontana, and I am asking for a variance so I can put a single-family home on the site. One of the reasons that I'm looking for this is actually to help keep my son on Long Island. Obviously, you know the situation with housing, the way it can be, and this seemed to be the most cost-effective way to get this done. The house we're proposing is a ranch-style home, should stay within the character of the neighborhood. Because of the slope of the property, however, the foundation will be out of the ground and a walkout type. So we're not going vertically up, you know, from the street level. It would look the same, but from the rear, the house would look more of like a typical two-story home. Currently, the lot's 14,000 square feet, so 140 by 100. So it's a pretty nice sized lot. There is an agreement with a neighbor to the rear. They had planted onto the property and encroached onto the property. They made an arrangement, I believe an easement was done with the previous owner. I am the contract vendee on this. So my understanding is that's taken place. In order to help facilitate that easement at the rear of the property, we have proposed retaining walls here that would come up to about the line of their easement, which I believe is 6 feet. Retaining walls will go in about 8 foot, come in 4, up, again up, trying to raise the level of the property itself. So you can see at the rear. The neighbor's plantings would remain, obviously, you know, or new plantings would be placed in. However, the board would consider type 1 and 2 plantings, of course, as they are required. We do have our Suffolk County Department of Health Services permit that has been issued to us. We have that good for 3 years now. They accepted our sanitary plan. We are also in application with the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, awaiting their answer. And that's basically what we have.
Okay. The 2 retaining walls in the rear that you're proposing?
Yes.
The first one is how tall?
They're 4 feet.
Okay,
Yeah, so it'll go in 4 feet from the property line.
right.
Which again, if you took a look at this photo here, I can pass it along if you'd like.
We have it.
You have it. So it'd be about 4 foot in, rise 4, back another 4, up 4. So at the lowest point of the property right here, I think we're at 36 feet. So we'll be looking to bring that grade up to about 44 feet. The rest of it is pretty much a giveaway to, you know, the neighbors as far as their plantings will be concerned. Even though it'll be our, you know, our inside our lot line, we're just going to bring it up rather than to keep it down.
You think that's sufficient enough?
I think so. I think so, because at that portion of the property, on
Well,
that
from the-
side of the property, I think the grade line is,
Well, from the front, I'm just going from the front to the rear, it's like.
right, at the
20
front corner of
like
that
20
property
like
is
21
48.
feet.
Excuse me?
21 feet?
Well, currently, on that side of the property is 48 foot, dropping down to 36.
So we're looking to bring that 36 up to about 44, so then it would be a more gradual grade from the 44 at that corner. At the south side of the property, it's, I believe, 56 or 58. So, it was one of the requirements here, looking for the, environmentally in the slope.
And you're proposing dry wells to?
Yes, absolutely. Everything's here on the site plan. Leaching fields, dry well, the treatment system. Again, there's a big dry well at the rear of the property with drainage coming from all over. I don't know if you can see it on yours. If you like the larger, I can.
No, I have it here.
Okay.
Thank you.
So all water will be captured from gutters and, coming off the driveway. There's also another drain at the driveway, which will go right into the dry well.
Okay.
Okay?
Anyone else on the board have any questions?
No, I don't think so.
No? Planning?
Just a couple of comments, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd just like to put on the record that we have received some correspondence from some of the adjacent neighbors who have concerns about the proposal. They are in the file if the board cares to review them. We also did receive some photos and I believe possibly a video from an adjacent neighbor showing, I'm assuming it probably has something to do with stormwater runoff from the steep slope coming into the backyard. Again, that's on the record, and we do have it on the computer if the board wishes to look at it. Just to give you some quick background on the property, this property has been the subject of 3 previous BZA applications before the board. They were conditionally approved by the board. Obviously, for steep slopes, there was a lot of plantings, there was a lot of mitigation for stormwater. The property was to be developed in the way that did the least amount of damage and the least amount of disturbance to the slopes. The current proposal is a little bit different than what has been previously approved by the board. The house is slightly positioned on the property differently than the previous applications, and I believe it's slightly larger than some of the other houses only because of the way that the house is situated on the lot, the amount of exposure of the foundation, which adds to the overall square footage of the house. I do have Liam Trotter here. He is the person in my department that does all of the LWRP reviews, and I'm sure that he has a few comments that he'd like to share.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Liam Trotter with the Planning Department. As Blaze had mentioned, this proposal differs from the previous approved cases. Those previous cases had a number of conditions. So due to the differential size and location of the proposed dwelling, it conflicts with certain policies of the LWRP. So what our office recommends is the applicant revise the plans to eliminate and mitigate some of the impacts it has on the adjacent properties, the environment, and natural scenic character of the waterfront. And we recommend that the Board of Zoning Appeals keep this public hearing open to allow the applicant an opportunity to revise the plans accordingly with our comments.
Will the board be giving us suggestions that they would like us to incorporate?
Yes.
Okay.
We can set up a meeting at our office, and we can sit down and give you our recommendations.
Okay. We're, yeah.
I'd like to request that the town engineer maybe take a look at it and get their input on the drainage, so that since we have some correspondence, we can address it in our conditions rather than let it work its way through.
Okay, agreed.
How long do you think you need to revise the plans? We're going to leave it open.
Yeah, if we can set up a meeting next week, and then it's however long it can take you to revise the plans.
I'm available to you, Liam,
Yeah.
when I could do it later this
month.
week or early next. And,
The second meeting in January?
Probably, yeah.
Okay. I don't have the date for that meeting yet. Is it the 26th?
January 23rd.
January 23rd?
doesn't work for me, guys, I'm sorry.
Okay,
And I know that far out in advance.
yeah. You need more time?
The next
It's
one
just, I'll
would
be
be,
away at that time. so
the
I
next
won't- I
one
won't
would be
able-
February 13th.
We're pushing out to February 13th. That
February
way.
13th?
It'll have to be.
Okay, February 13th.
February 13th.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. DEW agrees with planning's LWRP comments and wishes to consider information presented by the applicant and any comments received by the public as well. Thank you.
Okay, fine, thank you. Okay, so this will be adjourned to February 13th.
Perfect, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Have a nice evening. Oh, I'm sorry. Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? I'm sorry. Come on up, please. I'm sorry. Someone. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Megan Sandstead.
Could you,
Sure. My name is Megan Sandstead. It's Sandstedt.
thank you.
Yes, Dan Sandsted, we're the owners of 150 Highland Drive. It's the property adjacent to the rear yard line of this property. So basically, we just wanted to state a few concerns in terms of what takes place now and what we think would definitely take place with disruption of this property, of any of the dirt. As you all know, there's clearly a lot of slopes, and it's a very odd lot. So building on it has clearly been tricky. But even sitting as an empty lot has been very tricky for us as the lowest point neighbors of that property. We sent videos in, not opposed to someone building on it if it's doable and it doesn't affect us in a worse way than it's already affecting us. There's loads of rainwater that has nowhere to go except for into my pool, which is costing me huge amounts of money and electricity, cleaning it constantly. My pool vacuum runs 12 hours a day every time it rains for the next 2 or 3 days. My basement floods every time the rain gets, past 2 hours of anything relatively severe. The amount of money I've had to spend trying to repair the basement, cleaning the basement, having restoration companies come in and dry the basement out, test the concrete. It's always wet. It's just a real problem as it is right now. I have also spent thousands and tens of thousands of dollars trying to retain this wall. That's why I built further into the dirt and had to pay for an easement, which was another $10,000 out of my pocket, to be able to retain the dirt myself with vegetation, not just retaining walls, because retaining walls don't do the full job. Vegetation, rooting is what's done some of the help, but it's still, the videos you have and the pictures that you have are even with me doing all that. It's nonstop. I don't see any end in sight as it is. So I just have a big concern in terms of altering the property, shifting it, how it's done, how it is retained, if it is going to be approved in any way. I like the idea of what he said about going in and up and in and up, but I don't think it's going to be high enough with 2 4-foot sections. I do think it would have to be more than that if it was approved and done. Aside from that, I think there needs to be a significant amount of planting that needs to be done below and in that middle section of retaining, and then up. It just needs to happen if it's going to happen at all. And then another point I want to make is there's a lot of wildlife in there, a lot of bird life. There's owls living in there, and there's woodpeckers. I don't know what the DEC feels about that stuff, but I do think it's important for you guys to consider and look at and maybe communicate with the DEC about all that.
I think something that was mentioned is that there was going to be a site visit initiated. Is that what you had requested? That they would come and look at the property, not just base it off of someone had said something about a visit to the property. I thought it was you.
Usually we'll visit the property,
Okay.
but we had suggested the town engineer take a look at their
Okay, because
site
I
plan.
think that something that we had really just been concerned about is that I don't necessarily feel that it's an accurate description, that when you're there and you see it and you see the tremendous slopes, and it's a very unique lot. So if we can request that, if that's not already been suggested or, advised, that would, I think, be helpful. You mentioned some of the wildlife that might have some conflict there, I don't know, depending on what's in there, but there's quite a bit. So the site visit was something I wanted to mention, and also, where we live in the Nessaquag, in the corridor there, the soil, it's clay. So it has drainage issues already, so I don't know if there is anything about soil testing or anything like that, but I believe that's a big part of why, even with all this dirt that it could absorb into, it doesn't, it's still pummeling into
Stays
our
right on
yard.
top,
Dan mentioned the other things about the, the home and the yard and everything that's going on. I think we pretty much covered everything. There was one, I wanted to ask one thing. I'm a little unclear. The survey that was presented, is the easement just noted, or is it actually the square footage that we purchased part of that, or how does that work with an easement? So is that factored into their lot size? Because it's not actually it's not their land
Right,
to
so what
utilize.
she's saying is 14,000 square feet would technically reduce to 13,400
The
with,
first I heard of the easement was tonight.
oh,
Yeah,
okay,
that was something I was concerned
600
about
square
because
feet we
it
purchased.
didn't. Sorry, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry, we purchased 600 square feet on the easement, so it's not buildable, so that probably, I would imagine, has to be considered into.
Maybe, Mr. Donadio, are you aware of it?
I had a conversation this afternoon with one of the town attorneys about it, and the question I put to them was, if there is in fact an easement on the property, which there is, apparently it's recorded with the Suffolk County Clerk. We've received the legal documentation for it. It describes the meets and bounds and where it's located. We also have a copy of a survey that delineates where the easement is. The answer is that if, in fact, there is an easement on the property and the property owner does not have use of that easement area, it cannot be used to calculate lot area, gross floor area, or buildable lot area.
So the question I'm asking is, was that factored into all of these numbers and equations? Because the survey that I'm looking at when I went down to the town does not show me that my easement is on there.
I guess not.
Okay.
So then everything that was submitted for the variance, is that, how can you have
I
it?
guess it'll have to be recalculated.
Okay. I have a copy of it. I don't know if you want it. I did send it over. Would you like the hard copy?
We did get a copy of it, but
Okay.
if you want to submit it, you can.
Okay, and I also brought some photos. I did send them over, but I didn't see anything shown. So does everybody get to see those, or how does that work? Because I think the videos of the flooding and the photos are important. It's not minimal, it's significant flooding.
You should submit everything to make it part of the record.
Okay, so I did submit all of the videos. I don't know who has them, but I sent them to
We do.
Matt.
I think the office has it.
Okay, so you'll all be
Yep.
able to view those. And then these are photos. Do you want the hard copy photos? Those were submitted as well. And in addition, this is the easement, and then these are, do you want to see them in here? You want to look at them? I don't know how this works. So that was.
Yeah, the only other thing I want to state is I saw in the plan that the driveway is supposed to be down in that low corner that's right adjacent to our property. Again, I wasn't sure of any retaining walls mentioned, but I think a driveway at the low point would be more of a funnel for water than the clay dirt already is going into the lowest point. It's just going to literally feed it like a gutter right into 3 adjacent properties in the northwest and southwest corners.
And just one last thing I wanted to mention is, we did not see a variance sign posted as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know if,
It blew down.
okay, because all of the neighbors were looking for it and nobody knew which property it was, nobody could
Yeah,
find.
we rode by there.
We knew, but there were neighbors that didn't know.
Yeah, it was on the ground. I mean,
Oh,
you could see it was posted, I guess, the other night with the heavy wind and rain. It blew it down.
okay. Okay,
Not
Right,
only
that's it.
yours, other areas too.
yeah, okay.
That's
perfect.
all we have.
Okay, thank you for listening.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thank you. Who's next? Yeah. Good evening.
Hi. Pamela Loscalzo.
Could you use the microphone, please?
Sure.
You could,
Pamela Loscalzo.
can you spell your last name so we get it correct?
Loscalzo.
Thank you.
91 Lakeview Drive. I'm 2 houses down from the property, and we have a chronic water problem already. When it comes down Lakeview Drive, it floods all of us going down Lakeview. Not only does it come down the street, people have to raise driveways because of the water issue. It goes down our driveways and then down the rest of our property, which we have moats in our property of the wash down in our backyard. So because the street itself, Lakeview, is curved to the east, when we get water like we had Sunday, yeah, it comes straight to the east. So it's going straight down to that property. So we have this issue for years. I've been in my house for 29 years now. And every time it rains, every time it snows, every time the snow melts, we have a problem. My concern is when they take, if they are going to do this construction, when they take away all the natural vegetation and the trees, it's just going to increase the problem of the water damage that we have in our house. I get water in my basement now. So I have people coming in to correct that problem, but it's an ongoing problem. And with this being built, I see we're going to have a lot more problems with our property. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Come on up. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Robert Goldapper, Goldapper. I live at 140 Highland Drive, the house above Dan.
I'm Myrna Von.
I'm sorry, my wife Myrna. Myrna, M-Y-R-N-A. I've lived there for 38 years. I've had water problems for 38 years. Rained 2 days ago, I had 2 inches in the basement. The area is built on clay. This problem has never gone away. I've had the town in to look at my property, and I was told, this was years ago from the flooding, that what I should do is slope my house so that the water goes downhill. That would have affected their family and their home. I can't do that. You can't constantly take away land and expect that water, which is going to be there, to move to somebody else. The fact that they can build a house on that property legally is something I understand, but there has to be ways to prevent the problem to become somebody else's. The fact that the land, they want to make things bigger and better on a property that has already been, how do I say this? There is a legal aspect to the size of the property, and they want to change that. There's a reason for that legality. There's a reason for the size of that property. It should not be made bigger. If you're going to allow it, they have to take care of the people on that block. There are other lots of land on Highland Drive and on Lakeview. They will be affected not by necessarily, they will be affected by what you're going to do for this property. Because if you allow it, it's going to set a precedent for the other properties when they're being built. So I suggest they look at this strongly and make a decision that will not affect the person behind them, below them, or next to them. Thank you so much for your time.
Anyone else? You'll take all of this into consideration when you redo the plans?
Absolutely. I understand.
Yeah, come up to the
I
microphone.
understand what all the neighbors are saying, because I have a similar problem, and I live in Northport. And I live right by the Veteran Administration. I have a gigantic hill coming down my yard. and
Excuse
I've
me,
flooded
sir.
several times.
Can you just address the board, please?
Yeah, I've flooded several times myself. The general feeling I'm getting from the neighborhood is, this is obviously a problem piece of property. It doesn't have proper drainage. It doesn't have proper vegetation. Everything that's there is old, it's dead, so this property is just running water off. There's no control. What I'm proposing is a very large dry well to catch that water. What I am proposing in both of our retaining walls, and it's clearly shown here on the drawings, is drainage again, to capture as much of that water and move that water away. Right now, it snows, it rains for 30 years. You have a piece of property in an otherwise developed neighborhood. There's a house to the right, a house to the left, houses below, houses going to the river, houses above. This is a fully developed neighborhood with a lot in the middle. The water that these people are experiencing is not just coming from this lot, it's coming from the road, going down the hill. This house is situated at 58 feet. The river is at 10. Where is that water gonna go? Downhill. That's what's happening. At least here, I'm proposing grading the property, bringing it up, putting wells to capture. If you look at the drawing, the driveway has a well on it, has a drain to catch that water. We've already figured out that that would be a problem. Of course, water would go downhill. And we've put the flow here, and if you look, the flow goes right back into the dry well, which, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's 10 feet in diameter. 10 feet in diameter and goes down to about 25 feet. I've heard a lot about clay. The hole that is here on the drawings shows it as brown and loomy silty sand up to 4 feet. From 4 feet to 17, it's a fine to medium sand. And there is no groundwater encountered up to 40 feet. I don't know where the clay is coming in. This is the test hole. Where do we find clay? I don't know that everybody here is a geologist. They know. But I know that there's a problem in the neighborhood when it comes to that. I'm also not a developer. I am not somebody who buys properties and destroys neighborhoods. I'm a father. I live in Northport. I want my son to be close. San Remo is very close. The school district is excellent. It's one of the top 3 school districts in Suffolk County. I want to keep him on the island. I don't want him to go. So that's my plea, and I will make whatever adjustments are needed by the board and the council to alleviate everybody's concerns.
Okay.
Question for you, real quick, if you could. I noticed that the proposed driveway is showing a side entry garage.
Yes, sir.
And that pushes the driveway further north and kind of eliminates permeable surface between this property and the next.
I think we
Is
only
it-
wind up with a small, about 5 feet or so.
About what?
I think there's about 5 foot from the line.
So my question would be, had you or would you consider a front entry garage, and then you could push that driveway a little further to the south and then have more permeable
The
surface?
problem with the front entry garage is it would cause us to really go down. The home would be set almost at street level. So from the street, you'd be looking at basically a ranch house.
Right.
But because of the slope, rather than try to build it up, I think as the previous proposals were to try to build that land up, we thought we'd use that grade somewhat to come into the bottom of the house, because the foundation would be out of the ground, rather than try to bring soil from somewhere else. And, we're really looking to try to utilize the material that's on the site as best we can.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we'll see you back here February 13th.
Very good, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Liam, should I call you, or? Yeah, okay. Thank you.
The next case on the agenda is case number 19042, Irene Malonis, 55 Timber Ridge Drive, Comac. The location of the property is the south side of Timber Ridge Drive, 1,185 feet east of Fleetwood Road. The property is zoned R21. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum front yard setback from 45 feet to 40 feet for a proposed 39-square-foot portico, to decrease the minimum distance from any lot line from 8 feet to 4 feet for an existing 114-square-foot gazebo, to increase the height of a 5-foot fence on top of a 2-foot retaining wall from 6 feet to 7 feet for proposed Wall A, to increase the height of a 5-foot fence on top of a 3-foot retaining wall from 6 feet to 8 feet for existing Wall C, to reduce the minimum setback of a 2-foot retaining wall from the property line from 3 feet to 0 for proposed wall A, to reduce the minimum setback of a 2-foot retaining wall from the property line from 3 feet to 0 for existing wall B, to reduce the minimum setback of a 3-foot retaining wall from the property line from 3 feet to 0 for existing wall C, to reduce the minimum setback of a 5-foot fence from a 2-foot retaining wall from 2 feet to 0 for proposed wall A, to reduce the minimum setback of a 5-foot fence from a 3-foot retaining wall from 3 feet to 0 for existing wall C, to increase the maximum permitted paved surface in the front yard from 25% to 39% for an existing asphalt driveway, to increase the maximum permitted paved surface in the side yard from 25% to 35% for the existing asphalt driveway, to reduce the setback from any lot line from 1 foot to 0 for existing front and rear yard paving.
Good evening.
Good evening. John Teufel, that's Teufel, professional engineer, 707 Route 110, Farmingdale, New York. Before we get started, I'd just like to point out the driveway is not asphalt. The driveway is pavers, beautiful pavers. Then it's not an asphalt driveway.
John, excuse me, before you start, you didn't submit a power of attorney, right?
No, the owners are here tonight with me.
I need one of them up.
Oh, sure.
Just one of yours. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Pat Maris. I'm the owner of 55 Timber Ridge in Comac. I give John power of attorney to speak
Thank
on
you.
my behalf. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Thank you. As I said, I'm here tonight with Irene Malonis and her husband, Pat Maris, to request the front, rear, and side yard setback, retaining wall and fence height, maximum permitted paved surface, and driveway paving setback variances. All retaining walls involved are 32 inches or less in height. They're very small, and were required to prevent erosion of the existing grade of the property. The zone is R21, where a 45-foot front yard setback is required, and we're requesting 40 feet to the proposed front portico, which will improve the look of the front of the house and extends only 9 feet in front of it. We're also asking a 4-foot rear yard setback to the existing gazebo, where 8 feet is required by ordinance. The rear property line is adjacent to an area of land preserved when the community was built in 1986, so there is no rear yard neighbor, wooded area to the rear. And they've had no complaints from their side neighbors about any of the variances we're requesting tonight, and again, there is no rear neighbor. The next 7 items in the public notice regard the retaining walls. I could read them back, or can we make them as part of the record? It's just very
They're all
long.
part of the record now.
Okay,
Yeah.
good, because it'd be so many of them, but really, it's quite minor. But as listed, the one wall is only 24, the other one is 32. Our next request for relief is to increase the maximum permitted paved surface in the front yard from 25% to 39%, and in the side yard from 25% to 35%. Both the driveway and side yard driveway extension are formed of brick pavers, as I said before, with sand joints on a recycled concrete aggregate base to ensure adequate drainage. Finally, we are asking to maintain the existing 0-foot setback to the west side of the driveway and 0-foot rear yard setback to the patio, where 1 foot is required. All the work which are generated tonight's variances, except for the portico, which is proposed on the front, was performed in 2015 by a contractor who assured the Ms. Malonis and her husband, Mr. Maris, that no permits were required. The same old story, that they believed them and authorized them to do the work. Unfortunately, as we all know, they were wrong, and that's why we're here tonight. And that completes our case. If there's any questions, we'd be glad to answer them at this time.
Just clarification for me, wall B, is that around the gazebo, is that?
Yes, I believe that is B, yes.
That's B, okay.
No.
No?
Wall B is around that fire pit.
It's a little confusing, I know.
According
but-
to this, it is.
Right. Well, the fire pin isn't the variance,
yeah.
isn't part of the variance, of course, but we know you can ask about anything, of course. But I actually thought it was, well, wall C is the long one, which is north of that patio
So this
there
is
on the
wall A
back.
here. We'll see.
And it could be, it's a little bit confusing, but I thought B was the one. There's only two retaining walls, the one that's 24 inches around the gazebo.
3 foot for existing wall B, so 3 foot to 0. So it's either this one, wall A and B are adjacent to each other. One is on the side property line and one is on,
By the gazebo.
they're both by the gazebo,
Yeah,
correct?
that's fine.
Yeah, actually, and one of the walls is actually is on the wooded area behind, which we're gonna be moving, onto the property line. Again, that's another, the 0 feet we're requesting, but we're actually gonna move that wall.
Okay.
I'll move it back onto their property.
Right. Okay. Anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
Planning?
Just one comment, Mr. Chairman. So, as the gentleman said, there are some encroachments onto the adjacent property, which I believe is owned by Suffolk County. The one encroachment that really is not documented very well on the survey, it's very faintly outlined on the Suffolk County property, is a shed that's in the rear yard. We do have a photograph of it up on the board, but we don't have anything that indicates that it's actually on the applicant's property. That would have to be removed from the Suffolk County property and relocated back onto the applicant's property.
That's the shed right there, and they plan to remove that. That will be removed.
Sorry, I stole your thunder.
Okay, that's it?
Mr. Chairman, we also reciprocate or feel the same way regarding those encroachments. It was documented on the survey and the site plan that there was the existing shed, gate and fence and retaining wall that encroached onto the vacant parcel to the south, that they were to be removed. The survey site plan also indicates the following existing encroachments are to be relocated within the property line. Those are the 6-foot PVC fence that encroaches onto the residential parcel to the east, and the 4'8" metal picket fence that encroaches onto the vacant parcel to the south. We recommend the removal or relocation of these encroachments. And lastly, the survey and site plan also indicates that the existing gazebo, patio, and retaining walls encroach onto the town drainage easement to the south, and that a portion of the existing walls along the driveway encroach into the town right-of-way to the north. We recommend the removal or legalization of these encroachments as well.
Yes, so, yeah, we are aware of the drainage easement. My understanding is there is an attorney involved that's going to take care of that.
Okay? Thank you. All right, that's it. Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? No? Have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
The next case on the agenda is case number 19043, Giampaolo Lucina, 2 Heritage Place South, Nesconset. The location of the property is the southwest corner of Heritage Place and Heritage Place South. The property is owned R15. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum front yard setback from 45 feet to 40 feet for an existing 110 square foot porch. to increase the maximum permitted paved surface in the front yard from 25% to 30%, to reduce the front yard setback from a lot line from 10 feet to 0 for a proposed 6-foot fence on a corner lot, to reduce the minimum side yard from 16 feet to 8 feet for a proposed 14-foot by 32-foot in-ground swimming pool, to permit a fence greater than 4 feet in the required front yard for the proposed 6-foot fence.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. My name is John Paulo Lisena. If you want me to spell it, Lisena. I'm the property owner. I'll start off by saying, just by looking at this picture, everyone could agree it's a weird corner lot. Every time I went to the town and asked questions about it, the same thing was acknowledged. It is a weird lot, so it did take a lot of visits to the town to kind of figure out what's allowed, what's not allowed. For the most part, everything other than the pool and the fence was done when I bought the house a year ago from today, actually. So the pavers, the driveway right there in question for the 25 to 30%, it's covered by the bushes. This was obviously taken last month, so the bushes are, not as full. But from the street view, it's not as noticeable. It's not an eyesore. Again, buying the property, didn't know that that wasn't in the code. As far as the front porch in question, same thing. When we bought the house, it was like that. Requesting, it's actually 4 feet that I'm requesting. Again, it looks beautiful. I would love to keep it. The neighbors in the area, everyone has only talked about how nice it looks and not that they feel like there's a problem with that. The plans for everything, again, it was built prior, but I had an architect come give plans. I have pictures and drawings from the owner, previous owner who did it. We keep in contact. So the original pictures I have as well. Same thing with the fence in the front. The fence in the front right now is a 4-foot fence. I believe I have a picture in there with the fence. There are green giants that are growing in. He planted them 2 years ago, again, prior to when we moved in, so they are taking time to grow in. The fence, I'm requesting to change to a 6-foot fence because of the pool that I'm requesting for the backyard. The pool is what brought this all to light. When I originally called the town, whoever I spoke to was saying that this area would be considered my rear yard. I only need 6 feet. Turns out that's my side yard, even though it's in the rear of my house, and I'm gonna need 16 feet. Again, multiple visits to the town just so we can work this out. I have 8 feet, and on the plans you can see, if it was considered my rear yard, I do have the 8 feet to my neighbor's house. I spoke to my neighbors about it. They don't have an issue with it. I do have a bunch of trees in the area that, with a 6-foot fence back there, it's not an eyesore to the neighbors if we were to put it there. The trees are about 12 feet right now, so that helps out if they didn't want to look at a pool back there. If you go back to the plans, if you don't mind, you can see that it splits up what's considered my rear yard and my side yard. It's kind of directly in half, so all I'm asking is 15 feet to be considered my 8-foot setback instead of my 16-foot setback. With that, myself and my wife, we do plan on having kids. We would like a 6-foot fence in the front of the house for privacy, for the pool area. Our backyard is kind of raised compared to the street level, so everyone walking by the street, and it is a busy street where people like to walk, and I don't blame them, everyone just looks right into the backyard. So we would like some privacy there. Again, it's not an eyesore because the trees are growing in the front, so it wouldn't be that noticeable. But between the privacy with kids playing and hopefully a pool back there, that's why we're requesting the 6-foot fence. The pool, I am going to bury the electrical lines as it's stated in the plans, so it can fit in that area. As far as, can we put it in our rear yard, what's considered our rear yard, and that's the conversation I had with the town. I'm not gonna lie to you and say we can't. It just is not as feasible to us. We would have to cut down trees to put it where we want to put it. We don't want to start cutting down trees. We love the area. The trees are nice back there. We don't just want to cut down trees. There's a couple blue and red birds that hang out in those trees, and we don't want to mess with them. The paved area, we are going to rip up, so I'm not gonna sit here and tell you I don't wanna put it there because I have to rip up pavers, because the pavers were done when we moved in. I'm ripping up the pavers anyway to put the pool where we want it. We moved out here because we love the lot, we love the grass. We came from Nassau County, no grass, so I don't wanna start taking up my whole grass yard to put a pool there where it can fit in that rear area, what we're considering a rear area. Again, I do have pictures and addresses of other houses in the neighborhood that I saw that do have a 6-foot fence in the front, that do have a pool, closer to the lot line. I'm just requesting that, the pool back there doesn't affect anyone else but us, right? We spoke to our neighbors. My neighbors are on board with it. From the street, you're not looking at a pool. It won't affect the look of the house. Again, the 6-foot fence, there are 6-foot fences in the neighborhood, close to the street line, so I don't feel like we're asking for anything out of the ordinary. Like I said, it is a weird lot. If the house faced on Heritage Place, not Heritage Place South, like every other house on that block, a 6-foot fence where we're requesting it wouldn't be denied, or at least I don't think it would be, because you see rear houses with 6-foot fences on the street line, just because where our house is faced, that's where we're requesting the 6-foot fence, but that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thank
No, thank you. Planning.
So just one comment, Mr. Chairman. This application is actually similar to one that the board had heard probably about a year ago, right here in Smithtown, right on the corner of Edgewood Avenue, on one of the side streets near where the Moose Lodge is. Very similar in that the fence was proposed to be in the front yard. It was a corner lot. The board did grant a variance in that case. I know it wasn't to 0, but there was some relief granted, just for the board's information.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, one minor comment. The survey that was submitted does indicate that the proposed 6-foot vinyl fence that will replace the existing 4-foot vinyl fence encroaches onto the town right-of-way to the east. We recommend the removal or legalization of these encroachments.
You understand that?
Understood, yes.
Okay. All right, good. Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? You have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Happy holidays.
You too.
The next case on the agenda is case number 18886, Mir Baton, 19 Fort Salunga Road, Fort Salunga. The location of the property is the north side of Fort Salunga Road, 113 feet east of Woodmere Drive. The property is owned R43. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum side yard setback from 24 feet to 20 feet, which is existing, to reduce the total side yards from 60 feet to 43 feet for a proposed 598 square foot first floor addition and 920 square foot second floor addition. To decrease the minimum setback of a 6-foot retaining wall from the property line from 6 feet to 5 feet for proposed retaining walls B and C. To permit environmentally sensitive lands to be altered for slopes greater than 15%. For proposed retaining walls A, B, C, and D, to permit construction within 10 feet of any slope greater than 25% for proposed retaining walls A, B, C, and D.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Meir Biton, B-I-T-O-N. I'm here for previous application for changing, and what I want to say is I'm waiting for a long time to get that permit so I can start building. I said I'm here for a long time waiting for the permit to start building there since the last time I was here, I think like 8 months ago. Anyway, I have my representative from my engineer. If you have any question about the design or the change, I'd be happy to answer your question. He's my representative here.
Everything's the same since the last time you were here, correct?
Yes.
You just forgot to add a variance in.
Exactly.
Okay. Is that correct, right?
What is that?
Everything stays the same? You just forgot.
The design changed slightly. The retaining walls have changed a little bit, probably for the better, because the previous design didn't work very well in terms of LWRP. But the existing design works well. The only reason they had to come back was that the first time around, this variance was missed for disturbing the environmentally sensitive land at 15% slopes. That's why they're here tonight.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
No, thank you. Planning?
That was it.
Nothing.
No, thank you.
Nothing. Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Come on up, please.
Hi, so my name is Jackie White, and I'm the next-door neighbor at 21 Fort Salonga Road. And my husband was here at the last hearing, and this process began 72 weeks ago. 72 weeks ago, over an acre of land next to me was clear-cut. And it is on a slope, and it does affect my view, my quality of life. May I share some photographs? I'm sorry I didn't send them electronically.
You want to make
If,
a part of
please?
the record?
Yeah.
Please.
Yes, please.
You can just go back so we can get it on the record?
So the first batch I gave you, and you can pull that apart, it was just for me to delineate. It was what the property looked like prior. And then the second images is what the property looks like afterward. And you can see why a need for retaining wall would be necessary. Environmentally sensitive land has been cut up, has been chopped down and dug up. The sand has been mined. The value of sand is like gold, and it's been dug out. There are several issues. Over an acre of land has been clear-cut and excavated in advance of the board's approval, and for items not being asked for in the plan. I'm told by the owner that he wants to build a pool, but that's an in-ground pool, and that's why there's a necessity to have dug that pit out. But a pool isn't mentioned in those plans. Likewise, plans to build a garage on the west side of the house. So, okay, but that's not included in the plans. But that is what the owner has told me. And that's why that variance. I gather this means that he would have to come back to you at some point to ask for approval of those items as well. Yet he has cleared all of this land. The wildlife are going crazy. And maybe it's popular or not to care about that, but I do. That's why I moved to Fort Salonga 20 years ago. I like hearing the owls in the morning. And to have a developer move in and do this 72 weeks ago with no
Originally built?
I'm so sorry?
Didn't somebody clear your lot originally at some
So-
point when it was built?
I do not believe it was clear cut. That was my home, and this home that we're speaking to was built in the 1920s, the two
Well,
sisters.
at some point it was built, and at some point there might have been wildlife there too.
We have old growth trees. That's part of my problem. Your point is well taken. I do understand that I have cut down trees.
Sure.
Certainly. Clear cutting, as is the case in that image, I think we can agree is different than cutting down some trees.
I don't know, the whole neighborhood at one time didn't have any houses at some point. So everybody has to cut to make to put their houses in.
I agree. However, this is environmentally sensitive property. We're just a little bit away from Fresh Pond. And I have spoken to the director of the Fort Salonga Association, and I do have a letter from him. May I submit that as well?
Okay, thank you. You can continue.
I have nothing further to say. I do hope to resolve this amicably. I think, I question out loud. We have these regulations in town of Smithtown on paper for reasons. And I just question, the regulations are in place for a reason. I didn't put them there, they exist. And so if that's the case, then why is it so simple for someone to come in and say, okay, these are regulations, but I don't like them. I want them changed to suit me. Presumably regulations are there for everybody. And I have nothing else. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Excuse me. Are you going to? Nope. Okay.
I didn't do anything that promises without asking the town of Smithtown, include the tree. I went to ask Engers, they gave me permission. Number two, I'm trying to build that place for a long time. She complained about 72 weeks. She's right. I was waiting for a permit for 72 weeks. I cannot build with no permit. In the beginning, she told me, just build with no permit. They don't have no COs. And I said, no, I have to build with permit. It is coming from her. But it doesn't matter about that. But I'm dying to start already to build the damn thing so I can move in with my family. It cost me a lot of money. It cost me to live in Huntington, to pay in here. She thinking I'm doing it for pleasure?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Tramarko? Is it all right if we sneak one other case in front of yours? You want to do Strecker?
So we're doing,
What?
just one.
Yeah, I don't see the... He's outside, so we'll let him wait.
Okay.
Just this one.
Okay. So we're going to move on to case number 19014, Robert Strecker, for a vacant lot on the northwest corner of Janet Court and Francis Street in Wisconsin. The property is owned R15. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum lot area from 15,000 square feet to 12,500 square feet, reduce the minimum front yard setback from 25 feet to from 45 feet to 25 feet on Janet Court, reduce the minimum front yard setback from 45 feet to 40 feet on Francis Street, reduce the minimum side yard setback from 16 feet to 12 feet for a proposed 2,404 square foot, two-story, single-family home with 294 square foot attached side entry garage.
Good evening.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, the board, chairman, everybody else. Today we are seeking the 4 variances that Mr. Donadio just set forth.
Introduce yourself, please.
A little closer?
No, introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Robert Strecker, P.O. Box 69, Quogue, New York, 11959.
Thank you.
I am representing Doris Sweeney and the Margaret M. Welpe Trust, Living Trust. It's kind of a unique case because of the lot line situation here. The lot was purchased, lot number 62 was purchased in 1959 by Margaret Welpe and George Wilson. And it stayed vacant since, and it's still vacant. So it's been held on the tax maps as it is on the site plan. In 2011, a trust was created that moved that parcel into a trust from those people's names. The attorney made an error in the description when he submitted it to the county. This caused the county, or triggered the county, to move the lot line 25 feet by 100 feet onto lot 63, which would be the southern parcel, which is 14 Francis. So now the tax map line goes through the part of her garage on 14 Francis and her driveway. So this was done erroneously by a submitted deed back in 11. After the county moved the lot line crossing into 14 Francis Street, the property became encumbered. Initially, we were concerned about lot lines moving with the Suffolk County Wastewater Management. I contacted them, I spoke to them, we had a few meetings. They checked the 1981 tax map. They said that the map matches the map that is on the proposed site plan, lot 62. And that the dimensions were the same then. They further stated they would help me obtain a lot line modification to bring the lot back to its original spot where it was in 1959. They also agreed to, they would grant me an approval if I got a variance, or the variances we asked for. They would grant an approval for the new low nitrogen septic system. So if we bring the lot line modification back to what it was before this attorney made a mistake, the lot would be 12,500 square feet. With respect to the lot 62 being 12,500 square feet, it would fit the character of the neighborhood. Basically, in the 200-foot radius, 18 of the 29 houses are less than 12,000 or less than 12,500 square feet, and one more house is. So 19 houses would be equal to or less than this lot number 62 if we get these variances passed. As far as there's no negative impact on the environment from this. This was not caused, obviously, by the applicant. As far as side yards, I do have some photos. I don't know if you guys want to see them or if you're familiar with it. That area, a lot of the houses are 10, 12, 15 feet side yards on most of them, a vast amount of them. And if we go just outside the 200-foot radius, just north on Francis, the next 4 houses past the 200-foot radius, those houses are like 50-footers, 50 by 100s. If we go south on Francis past the 200-foot radius, there's a 10,000 square foot lot and maybe another 5,000 square foot lot. So this piece would be bigger. It would be 63% bigger than most of the yards in the neighborhood. And it would fit in the character of the neighborhood. We have a design proposed that would fit in. Some houses have been renovated across the street from 14 Francis. So the houses that we have designed or are looking to design would match those types of houses. They would be one single-family dwellings, which we're kind of in need of right now. I guess it's everybody's just the land is short now. There's not much out there, and that's about what I have.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, I just wanted to clarify that the configuration right now is that one kind of L piece is
Yes, sir.
the 25 by 100 used to be part of the lot, but now is no longer part of the lot.
So what happened was when this attorney created the living trust, he wrote the wrong description down. He gave that southern piece, he took it away from lot 63, which would be also known as 14 Francis. So when he did that, it took it away from there. Then they triggered the county to move the line, and now the line goes through 14 Francis's garage and their driveway. So they're kind of encumbered.
But the current configuration is what was on the 1981 tax map as far as Suffolk County House.
What I have submitted is actually, I traced it back. I actually have a CO from Smithtown that show, and I actually have the survey from it too. They're photocopies. They show that the configuration you have on the site plan is the configuration that it was in I only could find stuff back to like 1965, 66. But I know that this piece was purchased in 59.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Do y'all want to see the documents or? Okay.
Suffolk County Health is one that cares.
Excuse-
No, no, thank you.
No, thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You want to take a break now? The next case is going to be long. Mr. Tramarko, since your case is going to be rather long, can we jump over you and do, there's 4 signs? And then we can do you? It's up to you.
Okay. I'll be quick.
Thank you very much. These are all for the 4 buildings, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll be very brief. Thank you. I didn't ask for this. I just want you to know that. I don't want anybody to get mad at me on the way out. I didn't ask, but I appreciate the courtesy.
You said you were going to buy more coffee.
Yeah.
Do you want me to read each individual one onto the record, or do you just want me to give an abridged version? Do you want me to read all 4 of them onto the record?
Why don't you just read the one? They're all the same, right?
Well, they're all the same for different locations, but it's basically all the same type of application.
Read
I'll
all-
speak really fast. All right. Oh, yes, and affidavits, please. Case number 19028, B9 Osser Owner LLC, 45 Osser Avenue, Hop, the location, south side of Osser Avenue, 944 feet west of Old Willets Path. The property is owned LI. The applicant is requesting a variance to increase the number of wall signs from a maximum of 1 to 2, and to increase the maximum height of 2 21-square-foot wall signs from 15 feet to 41 feet for signs 2 and 3. Case number 19029, B9 Hopog owner, 90 Davids Drive in Hopog. The location is the north side of Davids Drive, 353 feet west of Ricefield Lane. Again, the property is zoned LI. The applicant is requesting a variance to increase the maximum height of a wall sign from 15 feet to 17 feet for a proposed 21-square-foot wall sign. Case number 19030, B9 Hopog Owner LLC, 88 Parkway Drive, Hopog. The location, the east side of Parkway Drive, 856 feet north of Oser Avenue. Again, zoned LI. The applicant is requesting to increase the number of wall signs from 1 to 2 and to increase the maximum height of 2 wall signs from 15 feet to 39 feet, 4 signs, 2 and 3. And the last one, case number 19031, B9 Comac, 60 Vanderbilt Motor Parkway. The location, the north side of Vanderbilt Motor Parkway, 409 feet west of Moreland Road. Again, zoned LI. The applicant is requesting to increase the number of wall signs from 1 to 3, to permit a wall eave sign not to face a public street, to increase the maximum height of a wall sign from 15 feet to 40 feet for sign number 2, and to increase the maximum height of a wall sign from 15 feet to 37 feet, signs 3 and 4.
Good evening.
Thank you. Bram Weber, Weber Law Group, 290 Broad Hollow Road, Melville, for the collective applicants. I was before this board for the original approvals for all 4 of these industrial buildings. We worked well together with the planning department and the board on appropriate variances for the buildings, all 4 of which are under construction, one of which has secured a tenant, keeping a tire distributor with 45 employees from leaving New York State, and they're staying in Suffolk County. These applications are for building identification signs. That basically what we did was, in abundance of caution, we went to the building department and sought variances for these signs. I think there's a question about whether we actually need signs or not. We need variances or not. We're seeking height variances, basically to locate a logo, a Link logo, and a building identification number on the facades of the buildings. And in one case, the logo is not the actual shape of a logo. It says Link, but we're seeking only to locate those signs appropriately on the facades of the building at certain heights, and where the building doesn't face a public street, but does require certain signage for notification for passersby. Again, just the number and the logo. That's the entirety of the relief that we're seeking. Each building does have a compliant monument sign, and each one of these signs does comply with the overall size requirement. It's just really the height, and again, it's to appropriately locate them at the tops of the buildings. And this board has, on at least 2 other occasions, approved signs appropriate for the height of buildings higher than those that we're seeking relief for here, one of which, of course, is 102 Motor Parkway, which is the Teachers Federal Credit Union sign. That was case 18328. And then the hotel that's close to it, the former Radisson Hotel at 110 Motor Parkway, that was case 17857. That sign height was 60 feet. Significantly higher than we're asking for here. And the Teachers Federal Credit Union, as I just mentioned, was 88 feet, significantly higher than we're seeking here. But again, appropriate for those facades, and that's all we're asking for here.
Okay, fine.
Thank
All right,
you.
Thank you. Anyone on the board have any questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you again for your courtesy.
You need a break? All right. We're just going to take a 5-minute break.
Next case on the agenda is case number 19037. Basser Kaufman of Smithtown LLC for Starbucks. The location of the property is the southwest corner of Middle Country Road and Alexander Avenue in Wisconsin. The property is zoned WSI. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the distance of a queue lane from a residential district from 50 feet to 26 feet, to reduce the minimum required truck loading space from 1 to 0, to reduce the minimum parking setback from the front property line from 25 feet to 18 feet on Alexander Avenue, to increase the number of ground signs from a maximum of 1 to 8 per parcel for signs 1 through 8, to increase the number of wall signs from a maximum of 1 to 6 signs for sign numbers 9 through 14, to increase the maximum height of a wall sign from 15 feet to 20 feet on the west elevation for sign number 9, to increase the maximum height of a wall sign from 15 feet to 17 feet on the west elevation for sign number 10, to increase the maximum height of a wall sign from 15 feet to 19 feet on the north elevation for sign 11, to increase the maximum height of a wall sign from 15 feet to 18 feet on the north elevation for sign number 12, to increase the maximum height of a wall sign from 15 feet to 20 feet on the east elevation for sign number 14, to permit a wall sign not to face a public street for signs 9, 10, and 13 for a proposed 2,548 square foot food retail building for Starbucks.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Vincent Tremarco. I represent the applicant. I've submitted the affidavits of posting and mailing to Mr. Donadio. I think the board will remember it was probably a couple of years ago when we started this application. We made an application to the board, but which I will get into in a minute. We withdrew that application. And basically, the reason was we were at the time negotiating with the State of New York Department of Transportation in order to get a curb cut on Middle Country Road. The planning department, actually the director, Peter Hans, and I think Liam Trotter, were instrumental in coming to a meeting with my clients with the state DOT, I guess about a year ago or so. And the DOT was adamant in not allowing a curb cut on Middle Country Road. So we were left with a couple of alternatives. The next alternative was to see if we could get access from not only Alexander Avenue, which is a town road, but also Deer Valley Road, which is a private access road into the condominiums, which this Deer Valley Road is connected to. Negotiations ensued. We had a meeting with a member of the board along with their attorney, and it turned out after extensive negotiations, we could not enter into an agreement that was satisfactory to the condo board or to my client. So here we are. We're left with the only alternative, and that is access from Alexander Avenue. But first we had to go back to the state DOT. And the state DOT finally agreed, and I submitted a letter to the planning department, which I think you probably have in your packet. It was this November 2023, where subject to certain conditions, the state DOT would allow us to put a turning lane in on Alexander Avenue. If you look at the map, I guess on the board or in front of you, you can see Alexander Avenue is depicted there. And the turning lane would be part of and take up some of the space, if not all of the space, between the existing Alexander Avenue and the subject property, probably about 18 to 20 feet, but I'll have our engineer explain that a lot better than I could. But after, again, extensive negotiations with the state, they finally agreed to allow this turning lane so that access into the subject property would be would facilitate much more easy access than just coming off Alexander Avenue. And I want to emphasize to the board that the size of the property is 1.6 acres approximately. And the size of the building compared to the property is probably, I don't know, we're going to ask the engineer, probably about 10 or 12 or 15%. The property is very, very underutilized. We certainly, if we wanted to, could build an office building, a medical complex there, and build a much larger building, and that would create more traffic problems than we could even think about. So we're here tonight to ask the board for these 3 variances. And the other variances are sign variances, and I know the board has a problem with the amount of sign variances, but just think about it. Every fast food establishment that comes into the town of Smithtown is forced to ask for these sign variances because our ordinance really is not up to date with respect to sign boards, ordering boards, menu boards, directional signs. These are all very necessary when you are operating a drive-through restaurant, coffee, Starbucks, all types of drive-throughs require very specific directional signs because obviously the people in the cars have to be directed. And we'll talk about that a little bit with a representative of Starbucks. So here we are, and the problems that we are facing now are basically issues that the planning department brought up, and Mr. Donadio was kind enough to send me the recommendations to the board. Although he didn't have to give them to me, he did give them to me ahead of time. This is not a PAR. He reminded me that that's only for a special exception, and he was right. But in any event, I'd like to just go over very briefly the statements made by the planning department, which, by the way, we've had a few meetings with the planning department, and again, they were very helpful in guiding us to where we are today. The last item, number 6, they indicate they would prefer not only access on Alexander, but also on Middle Country Road or via the Country Point driveway with an easement. An easement, they say, could also provide those residents with possible access to the existing traffic signal. Well, we tried. We did, as I said before. We sat down with the representative of Country Point, their attorney, and we could not enter into any type of agreement that would be satisfactory to the condo board and also to my client. The question about the statement number 4 that the building architecture should match the colors and materials used for recently approved Comac and Kings Park locations. We don't have a problem with that. The building as positioned has the least attractive elevation from Middle Country Road. The blank wall as proposed is unacceptable. Well, it might be unacceptable to someone in the planning department, but this is a very necessary construction item, and it's a business management item, because the way the building is set up so that they can service customers. And part of that service requires that building, the long side of the building, to be facing Middle Country Road. I think the concern also is the blank wall is proposed to be unacceptable. Well, this doesn't have to be a blank wall. There are many different facades that could be put on that wall. Remember now, this is a service wall. This is where Starbucks makes their coffee, sets up all their machines, and so forth. So they need that full wall, and they can't have actual windows facing Middle Country Road, because then they couldn't put all their equipment up there. But we do have an alternative, and that alternative would be structures that look like windows, but they're really not windows, but appear to be windows from Middle Country Road. So the facade could pretty much look like the south side of the building, and not be a blank wall. And we understand that planning is concerned about how the building would look. So we think we have that pretty much figured out. And of course, during the site plan procedure, we would meet with planning and show them different ideas with respect to various modes of construction that would appear to be actually the front of a building. Also, we're going to speak on the landscaping. We have our civil engineer that'll talk about that. And also, I'm going to ask Mark Kemp, one of the owners of Bassett Kaufman, a rather large real estate company operating in Nassau and Suffolk County, to talk a little bit about how they maintain their buildings and basically how long they've been in business. The final problem that planning seems to feel is a situation that could occur is the queuing. We right now have an 18-car queuing. You can see on the site plan, which shows that, and we think that's very, very adequate, more than adequate than is necessary. However, a while ago, talking to the engineer, our traffic engineer, he had a suggestion that would take care of any possible overcrowding of the queuing lane that would increase the number of cars from 18 to a greater amount. And I know the board's concerned about it, and frankly, I've seen that happen right on 25A, coming to work every day in St. James, where the cars are out in the street, and there's somebody directing the cars from Starbucks, and they do a great job, but the queuing lane is much, much smaller in St. James, maybe because they bought an existing building and had to modify it. I don't know the reasons. Same thing happens once in a while down the block from my office with the Starbucks. But both of those lots, the St. James and the Comac property, are on much, much smaller lots, less than half the size with respect to the Comac lot, and about half, a little bit more than half the size of the St. James lot, which, if anybody remembers, used to be, I think, a Shell gas station. But in any event, that seems to be the greatest concern that planning has. So getting back to what I said before, we sat down in the conference room, if you will, or the card room in this building, and I talked to the traffic engineer, Matt Seckler, who will tell you more about how we think we can eliminate and alleviate the concern that planning has with respect to the queuing. Nobody more than Starbucks wants this to work. It doesn't make for good customers when people are out in the street in cars waiting to buy a cup of coffee. Excuse me. So we did look at that. We didn't have a heck of a lot of time because I only got this, I don't know, sometime today, right, Blaze? So, but he was good enough to send it to me ahead of time, and we did talk a little this afternoon, and of course with the engineers tonight. So with that, I'd first like to call Matt Seckler, our traffic engineer, to tell you a little bit about what he thinks could alleviate the problem of queuing and how he would do that, and talk about the traffic in general and what his studies showed. So if the board would allow me, I'm going to call Matt to come up. Thanks, Matt.
Good evening.
Good evening. Matt Seckler with Stonefield Engineering Design. I'm the traffic engineer on this project. Sure, it's S-E-C-K-L-E-R. So as council mentioned, we've had a lot of conversations with Department of Transportation over the last couple of years regarding access to this site. Essentially, you've heard from council, we've been prohibited from having any access along Middle Country Road, so that puts the access point onto Alexander Avenue. Knowing that Alexander Avenue in its current state does experience queuing during rush hour time periods where queuing will spill back from Middle Country Road even beyond the sonic driveway that exists today, we sought that a way to alleviate some of the congestion that exists today and also to be able to accommodate our traffic would be to make some modifications along Alexander Avenue. To do so, what we are doing is we are, as council mentioned, widening Alexander Avenue towards our property, so that green kind of triangle portion that you see in the screen before you, we'll be widening the road towards that direction. What that will do, we'll be able to create 3 northbound lanes as you approach the light: a left turn lane, a through lane, and a right lane. Currently today, you basically have 2 lanes, but only about 80 feet from the signal. So you basically could stack maybe 4 cars side by side, whether people are making a left or going through and right, in those 2 lanes. In the future case with this widening, you have 200 feet of a left turn lane, 200 feet of a through lane, and 200 feet of a right turn lane, which means you could stack 10 cars side by side by side to help get cars through on the green light at Alexander Avenue. We could process a lot more cars in the northbound direction than we can today. In addition, with what we're working with the state is also changing the way that timing works at the light, so that on Alexander Avenue, when you're going northbound, you will have a green arrow when you're coming in the northbound direction. So you will not necessarily have to wait for traffic to come in the southbound direction. Basically, southbound Alexander and northbound Alexander will operate separately. So northbound will go, then southbound will go. So you left turns, if you want to make a left turn onto Middle Country Road, there'll be basically no opposing traffic when you have that green light. And the way that we're able to accommodate that is that if you think about a Starbucks, its busiest time period is in the morning. On Middle Country Road, the left turns from Middle Country Road are least used in the morning. Most people are not making left turns from Middle Country Road on a morning weekday time period. So what we're doing is, with the state's guidance, taking some of that left turn green time and giving that to Alexander Avenue, both in the north and southbound direction, to again alleviate the congestion that exists today and accommodate our traffic that we'd be obviously adding a Starbucks to this location. So we've had multiple conversations with the department. We provided them our analysis. We provided town staff our analysis as well. And again, as council mentioned, most recent correspondence from the Department of Transportation is agreeable to this additional widening. So again, that's widening towards our property and creating 3 basically 200-foot lanes for traffic in the northbound direction, where currently you have 2 lanes for about 80 feet and then a single lane that currently backs up beyond the Sonic driveway today. So that's how we looked at how we'd accommodate traffic from an off-site perspective. From an on-site perspective, we've obviously having worked with Starbucks over the years and other similar users, that queuing becomes a concern. Obviously, during the peak of COVID, a lot of drive-through locations were overrun because there was nobody utilizing the inside of stores. Staffing level was not where it should be inside the store. And currently what we're seeing here is one of the newer models that Starbucks has in terms of being able to provide for best operation efficiency for drive-through operations. Internally to the site, and again, as the traffic engineer, probably not the witness to explain exactly the inner workings, but the way that the internal, basically cold beverage process is being done inside these newer Starbucks can cut down on the service time by about half. So basically, they could process their cold beverages much faster today in their newer stores than some of their older stores. Secondly, what we're providing is a queue for 18 vehicles to stack within our site without it backing up towards the Alexander Avenue driveway. Most new Starbucks are being designed at about a 12 to 14 car queue, so this is greater than your standard new store that you have for Starbucks. But in reviewing some of the concerns of the planning staff, there are some changes that we can make so that if the queue does exceed 18, instead of it exceeding right at the Alexander Avenue driveway, which would probably be the biggest concern, we could basically turn the queue so that it instead backs up into the drive aisle basically next to the dumpster, so that when people are entering the drive-through, exactly following the finger, they would enter via the drive aisles internal to the site instead of right near the driveway on Alexander Avenue. So that is something we can work with staff to kind of make that modification, but essentially what it would allow is that if there is an overflow beyond 18 vehicles, it would basically stack along the front aisle of the store instead of towards Alexander Avenue. Again, it's tough to visualize. I don't have a plan that I could kind of show you, but we kind of would basically close the ability to enter the drive-through near Alexander Avenue and have people basically wrap in front of the store. I think you're kind of seeing it with those hand motions that I can't control, but that's what we're looking for as a way to alleviate some of the queuing capabilities on the site. Besides the internal building being more optimized, I think council mentioned the St. James site, because I do think that that is obviously one of the conditions you don't want is a site to operate brand new that looks like St. James in the sense of some of the queuing and congestion you have. Some of the differences between our site and St. James has a dead-end parking aisle, meaning that when you come in and you don't see a parking space, you basically reach the end, and you have to kind of U-turn, K-turn yourself to get back out if the parking lot is full. That also has 28 parking spaces. Our site has 44 parking spaces, which is greater than the 26 space requirement. So again, almost half as many as St. James, and it has full circulation, so you never reach a dead-end aisle. You basically could continue to recirculate, so if you try to find a space in front of the store and there's none there, you could recirculate within the parking lot instead of reaching the end, having to back up and K-turn your way out. Secondly, St. James has a queue of about 7 to 9 vehicles, and that 7th or 9th vehicle or so is basically right on the road. Basically, you enter right on the road. With the change we're looking to make here, 18 vehicles, so basically double what they have at St. James, and you basically, if we have that overflow, it would be internal to the site instead of onto the roadway directly. Additionally, one of the biggest aspects in terms of Starbucks being efficient with their operations is making sure they have enough time from when you place their order to when you get to the pickup window that it's ready for you. The last thing you want from a drive-through operation is to get to the window and you have to wait because your food isn't ready, your drink isn't ready. At St. James, there's basically 3, maybe 4 vehicle positions between when you order and when you get to the pickup window, which gives the people inside the store very little time to get it ready, and also means they're only basically making 4 orders at one time inside the store. They can only make 4 orders at a time because they only know what you're ordering when you get to the order board. This site, you are 7 spots away from the pickup window when you make your order. So basically, you have a lot more time for your order to get ready inside the store. The orders are made faster because of their new interior fit out. And lastly, they could make more simultaneous orders at one time, making the whole operation more efficient. So when I look at drive-through design, one of the key aspects is how far is the order board from the pickup window, and this site at 7 is a vast improvement. It's almost the whole queue that you have at St. James, just from the order board to the pickup window, which is a key component. So overall, looking at this from a traffic perspective, and again, I know that this is something that we've spent, working with DOT almost 2 years working through. I have a lot of data and information, but I just wanted to kind of parse it down to what I thought were the key aspects. Off-site improvements, trying to alleviate the queuing along Alexander Avenue. Internal improvements, making sure we have sufficient queuing and obviously more than sufficient parking, and trying to get those people on and off this site as efficient as possible. So that's, I think, all that, unless council has any questions for me.
Does the board have any questions?
I have one question.
Sure.
You had indicated that DOT approved widening of Alexander, putting in the turning lane with conditions. What are the conditions?
Well, we basically provided this as a conceptual plan. We provided this as a conceptual plan. We now have to basically do the signal design. We have to move, there's a pole in that corner. It's a pedestrian pole. We have to
Right.
move that. We have to do the ADA design, make sure the crosswalks and ramps are designed correctly. Basically, we've gotten through kind of their stage 1 process. Now we have to do the full design is the next step.
Okay, thank you.
Would it be possible for you to submit the revised site plan that you're talking about with that queuing, where it shows it queuing up on site as opposed to onto Alexander?
Sure. I mean, our site engineer could redline a quick piece of paper right here, but
No, no,
I
just
I
as
do
long as
think
we
we
have it.
we definitely could provide that, yes.
So next, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to call Zach Chaplin. He's going to talk a little bit about the landscaping and the general placement of the building. So, Zach?
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Zach Chaplin, last name Chaplin, and I'm with Stonefield Engineering and Design, civil engineer for the project. So I think a couple things I just wanted to talk about. I think the first thing is the lot itself. It's 1.6 acres, so this is quite a sizable lot, much larger than you see, older Starbucks today. So when looking at the layout, obviously we've been working on this for a number of years, probably looked at maybe 5 or 6, maybe 7, 8 different layouts, working with DOT, working with planning staff, trying to optimize the layout in terms of where the building is, where the queue is, and the parking, and then also important is the buffering. So with the layout that we have shown today, what we really tried to do is get everything closer to Middle Country Road. The building itself, the drive-through queue, as far away from the residential areas as possible. We actually have 60 feet from that rear property line to our parking, and much of that is vegetated today with substantial trees that can remain. So you're going to have a large, significant 60-foot buffer that's going to remain in the back of the site, really kind of just buffering our site. And then the building is another 100+ feet away, closer to Middle Country Road. And I think having the building there really puts all of the activity kind of closer to that commercial area rather than to the back where obviously we have a butter residential district. The other part too is our menu board, right? So that's strategically located along Middle Country Road so that any noise impacts that's going towards the street instead of towards the rear. Now, it was mentioned that we're seeking a couple variances, and I think it's worth just kind of talking about that aside from signage. One of the variances, I believe it's a drive-through queue, needs to be 50 feet to a residential district. Technically, Deer Valley Drive is a private road, so it's considered a residential district. That's where we have that variance. We have, I believe it's 26.5 feet where 50 feet is required, but that's a road. That's not an actual, residential, single-family home lot. So I think it's important to note that. And the other variance is, one is for no loading zone, and that's mainly because Starbucks typically doesn't have them. The loading happens off hours, and they use small box trucks, so they don't need a large loading zone like some other retailers. And then lastly, there is a variance for parking in a front yard, and really that's just for 18 feet we have to the drive-through queue, not parking on Alexander Avenue. But I think it's important to note that Alexander Avenue has a really large right-of-way. So it's actually much larger than 18 feet to the road because we have that large right-of-way, some of which we're going to be using for the intersection improvements that my colleague had mentioned. And lastly, I think if you look at the site plan, there's going to be a significant amount of landscaping we can put in on all three sides of the site. So we're going to have that existing buffering with all those mature trees. They're going to stay to the rear, and then we're going to put a lot of new landscaping on the other sides of the development, so that this can really look like a great site and act safe and efficiently.
Thank you.
Does the board have any questions?
Yeah, I do. I have a question. If you could just talk about, what would the residents closest are the ones from the Country Point?
Actually, the closest residence is to the south. There's a single-family home not within that development that probably sits about 20, 30 feet away from the south property line.
So what will the nearest residents be able to hear? What will they be able to see? What will they be able to smell? I mean, those are your basic things that, I would be concerned with if I lived around there.
Well, I think that's why the plan is designed the way it is. We have a 60-foot buffer, and I think it's important to remember that this is an wooded site, right? It takes years for trees to grow in maturity, right? So when people say, oh, we're putting in a buffer, that initial planting height could be 8 to 10 feet. Some of these trees are 30 to 40 feet. So all those trees act as a great barrier for noise, visibility, smell, whatever you may have. So that's going to remain in the rear. And then, like I said, you have another 100+ feet until you get to the main activity of the building and drive-through. So that's 160 feet of buffering, essentially, from the main activity of our site to that residential area.
Okay.
And I'd just like to add that besides the natural buffering, the Board of Site Plan Review will require whatever plantings they so desire, even where those natural buffering trees exist already. So they have the final say on what gets planted, how it gets planted, and where it gets planted. I'd now like to call Jeff Berenger, who's affiliated with Starbucks, just to talk a little bit about one of the questions Mr. Gargiulo had about noise. Maybe he can talk about odors too that may emanate from Starbucks, and also the necessity of all of those signs. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Berenger. I'm with Starbucks Coffee. Berenger is Beringer. I guess I could speak a little bit about any smells or sounds that might emanate from the building. Typically, we don't have any smells that emanate from the building. There's no roasting of coffee done on site. There's no exhaust fans that would pull any coffee smell out in particular. You mostly notice it when you step inside the building. Any noise would be isolated to the front of the building for the most part, most likely near Middle Country Road. That would be where the drive-through order point would be located, and that's where the speaker would be, where people would order and interact with the employees inside. I could speak a little about operational efficiency as well. We've made some strides over the years to improve the efficiency and the throughput, and as to how many drinks can be made at one time. One of the newest advances that we've got is in this, and it will happen in this store in particular as well, is you might have noticed some of the Starbucks are switching over to pellet ice instead of ice cubes. So they're much smaller little pellets. The reason for that is there's a new system to make cold beverages, frappuccinos, cold coffees, that utilizes that pellet system. And the pellets are essential because the ice machine is located in the back kitchen, and there's a system that transports the ice to dispensers in the front. And those dispensers allow them to make drinks much faster. So it will eliminate a lot of the cars that queue up.
What are the hours of operation?
Typically 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Sometimes they change slightly depending on the business volume.
7 days a week?
Yes.
Can you comment just a little on the signs,
Sure.
the necessity of those signs?
Sure. The signage, obviously signage on the building for visibility's sake, so that customers know where to find the building, where to find the entrance. The other signs would be directional signs that are located throughout the parking lot, near the drive-through lane, and those are basically there to ensure that the proper traffic flow of the cars entering the drive-through and knowing where to exit correctly.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? No questions.
All right, and finally, I'd just like to call Mark Kemp, he's one of the owners of Bassett Kaufman, just to tell you a little bit about their operation, how long they've been in business, and the amount of real estate that they oversee. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Mark Kemp, K-E-M-P. I've been with Bassett Kaufman I just had my 32nd year work anniversary. Our company has been in business for over 60 years, and we own and manage real estate in 5 states, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Pennsylvania. About half of the things that we own are on Long Island, and we own, we manage, we maintain, we repair, we do all aspects of the things that we do own, and we would do that here. You know, we'd maintain the parking lots, we'd repair any problems with the building. We recently completed 2 Starbucks, one in Connecticut, one in New Jersey, so we know exactly what to expect when we construct this building, and we're very excited about doing this, and we hope that everybody here is too.
Thank you.
That concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tramarko. Blaise, you have anything to add?
Just a couple of comments, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Tramarko covered pretty much everything within the memo that I just passed out to the board. Just to save time, just to quickly touch on a couple of points. As Mr. Tramarko mentioned, planning is very concerned about traffic impacts to Alexander Avenue, to Middle Country Road, about queuing on the site and the possibility that there may be an overflow onto Alexander Avenue, which could exacerbate the traffic issue. Obviously, we need to take all of the residents' comments and concerns into consideration when we review this as well. Regarding the traffic and the improvements that are proposed to be made to the northbound lanes on Alexander Avenue, certainly having those 3 lanes would definitely help with traffic flow at that intersection. The current layout only provides 2 lanes, a right-hand turn and straight lane, and a left-hand turn. And the signalized traffic light is very long in between the amount of time that people can actually move from that intersection and go the way that they want to go. The one issue that we see with it, though, is that there's really no plan that shows some type of a realignment of the southbound lanes on the north side of the intersection. That would be on the northeast and northwest corner of Middle Country and Alexander. We would like to see that. We have not received any comments as of yet from the Highway Department or the Traffic Department, so we don't know where they stand on traffic issues. And with this addition of lanes being added to Alexander Avenue. Also, we have not received a traffic impact study, so we don't really know at this point if there is any issue, what the issue would be. It would be within that study. Although the engineers have certainly come up with a good design for the site, we do feel, based on the needs of traffic, to be concerned about traffic, to be concerned about flow on the site, also to try to alleviate as much traffic out onto Alexander as possible at one time, that our design would work a little bit better in terms of queuing and in terms of the internal workings of the site. As far as the signs go, the board has seen many Starbucks applications in the past, and you're well aware of the recommendations that we make for the signage.
Thank you.
So,
Sabrina?
Mr. Chairman, to ensure full compliance with our environmental review, DEW wishes to consider information presented by the applicant, as well as any comments from the public before making a recommendation to the board. Thank you.
All right, we're going to open it up to the public now. Please, one second. Everybody gets one opportunity, so collect your thoughts, get all your questions down that you want to ask, because you're going to get one opportunity each, okay? Whoever wants to come up first, come on up. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Susan Fink. I'm 159 Alexander. A lot was said here, so bear with me because it may be a little disjointed. As far as talking about, you asked what will the residents who are near there hear, see, and smell. I don't know if these people are aware, they should be, that the closest resident, there's one gentleman who lives across the street, across Alexander. The closest resident is a zombie house. Nobody's living in that house right now, so they're not here to speak for themselves. I haven't heard that addressed. I don't know what they'll see. I don't know. They're right on the fence line. That was one thing. When they spoke about they know what to do on their property as far as queuing. They know how many cars they need to have space for. Then why haven't they fixed the old ones? On 25A, cars are still coming into the traffic lane. If they know what they need, why did they leave it that way? I don't have faith that they know what they need on this. Because if they haven't, when we listen to the BZA meetings, the past ones, and we've heard them speak at other places, they said, oh, we know what we need. And then they don't. So how do we have any faith that this will be okay? All right, that was from some of the things that were mentioned. We have heard that there's going to be no entrance and exit on 347. That means everything is on Alexander. Haven't heard anything about which way the traffic will turn coming out of the property. Are they going to be able to make left turns going north and right turns going south? If they make a left turn going north, let's say, and adding that lane of traffic would be very nice. I agree that for one lane to be able to turn. But if somebody wants to come out of the property and go towards Costco, they have to cut into 4 lanes of traffic on that plan. Right now it'll be 3 lanes. The lane coming south, they have to go across that, across the one that's going to go towards Jericho and make a left turn, across the one that's going to go to Jericho and go across, and get into the 4th lane of traffic to go across. It sounds like a panacea, but it's not. And if you say no left turns, we know the signs don't work. We know what happened with Sonic. People make the turn that they please. I'm not saying everybody. There are a lot of people who obey and an awful lot who don't. So you can't say that we're going to control how the traffic comes out with signs because it doesn't work. I spoke to one woman in Sonic, 6 months ago. I was walking to Regazi. She came into Sonic illegally. She came from across Jericho, came into Sonic in a turn she couldn't make, and she sat with her kids and had a meal. So as I walked over, I said, I'm not trying to press you on anything, just teach me something. You came in that way. She said, yes, I did. because it's convenient, instead of going all the way around by Regazi and coming in. And she said, and I said, when you leave, what will you do? She said, I'll make the left turn, which is illegal. So she's going to come in straight, eat, and go out straight. And she said, honestly, I'm going to do that until there's a red light camera there to catch me, because it's easier. So deciding we can put signs up is not an answer. Okay, for the cars that are going to exit on and off Alexander, is there a plan which way they can turn? I haven't heard anything about that.
We'll ask.
Okay. If they come off Jericho Turnpike and turn onto Alexander, they have a very short space to do that. The people trying to get into Sonic are trying to find out how to get into that, but there is a small space before they hit the traffic. Who are these queuing up for this to get in? It's going to be dangerous. If they come out of Starbucks and they make only a right turn, that means you're going to put every single car that goes through there on Alexander Avenue. They will make U-turns to get off when they realize they're not where they want to be. They go, when Starbucks opened, when Sonic opened, Dover Hill got traffic making U-turns, Yarmouth got traffic making U-turns, all the way down Alexander Avenue got traffic making U-turns, and they're still doing it. And we're going to put every single car that comes out of Starbucks onto Alexander Avenue if they make just a right turn. They go to the stop signs and they stop there, or they go through. But I mean, there's a place where the traffic builds up coming onto Alexander at the stop sign that's there. If they're coming out of Sonic, there's going to be more traffic there. We're overwhelmed. Alexander Avenue is not a commercial street. Yes, the north part is. The part that's across Jericho is commercial, but our side is not. When I bought my house 54 years ago, the map had it closed off. It was a through street, it was going to be dead-ended. So people say, you bought on a street like that, you knew what you were getting. No, we didn't. You guys have a map that shows it dead-ended. Because in order for them to sell my house to me in 1968, they had to have a plan with you. It showed a dead end. Now the same map has a stamp that says superseded. I live on that street. These people live on that street. They live further down. The people further down are going to get all the traffic also. You can't do that to us. Okay. I don't know what the answer is, but we would love Starbucks to go somewhere else. And there are people who want them. I know I can't talk to them. I spoke to the realtor who was trying to rent stores in the mall next to Zan's, the deli, in the parking lot. There's an empty store there. I called the number. You have to get through. It's odd. Where IHOP used to be. It's a perfect location. She said, we would love them to be there. But we know right now they can't talk to us because they're in negotiation with the landlord who owns the current place where they want to go. I'm hoping that you don't grant these variations, these variances. If you don't grant these variances, as one person said, rules are good unless somebody wants you to change them. They're saying these rules are good except for them. So please change these. If you don't give them these and they don't open there, they can go over to IHOP. We'd hope you do that. I can give them a phone number. They would love to have them. It's a lot of variances. I don't know what people will see. I don't know. Signs, numbers, distances. The zombie house, those people are going to move in there. Somebody's going to buy that house and they're going to have a Starbucks right next to them. Okay. I think some of my neighbors would like to make points also.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Who's next? Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you very much. My name is John Mangano, M-A-N-G-A-N-O. Just a couple comments. If you can move that map down a teeny bit, one point I want to make, down. The other way, down. So you can see the other side of Alexander. Right now, on Alexander going north, you have that right-hand lane, which goes right and straight. That just goes right by the lane that's a left-hand lane. So when they add the extra lane going north, the center lane That's a head-on collision to people making a left-hand turn. You can see it right there. How the Department of Transportation is going to approve that, I don't know. Second point, when a corporation works on a property for as long as they do, this is a home run for them. So they'll tell you anything. So they're telling you they can queue 18 cars. It's way better than their other locations. But because this is a home run, we're not too sure that 18 cars is sufficient. Secondly, or thirdly, since Sonic opened up, and Sonic doesn't have any signage that shows where you enter, right? So many people come down Alexander looking to make that left turn into Sonic. Then they see it's a one-way. What do? They're making U-turns on Alexander, right? On my street, Yarmouth. So it's already a disaster. Now, Sonic has been there several years. The problem hasn't gone away. Not as bad, but hasn't gone away. So they really need a sign how to go in. But Starbucks, this is a home run for them. The commercial, the real estate there, they're going to do tremendous business. And God bless them. But they're going to screw our lives up. So we ask you to do what the New York State Transportation Department and the condominium has done. Do not give them permission to move into this facility. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for giving us the time. I'm Jane Goldrich. I speak with the Goldrich family at 150 Alexander Avenue. We're speaking tonight because, yes, this is commercially zoned land, but the difference is here is this commercially zoned land directly abuts local properties, and it's on a local street. When it was first zoned as a commercial piece of land, it was with the intention of Middle Country Road being a very commercial area. But these significant variances are going to make a local road into a commercial area, and that's significant. And we only get one chance to stop that happening, and that's now. That's by tomorrow morning and by the time this decision is made. And so it's so significant. A local street with local children and local families. And I look at all of these variances up here and I see the significant change that you're going to make to the landscape of this local area for a Starbucks. And no disrespect to Starbucks, a very successful business. Very successful business, of course. But please, let's look reasonably at this decision and say, is it reasonable for a commercial entity like this to put out local citizens in such a way? I know it's happened all over the country and all over the world that this occurs. So why is this different? There are, as our partner spoke, Susan, there are many alternatives. And I'm looking at your area variance considerations, and I can see right on there that it asks, are there ways that we can solve this without causing this significant change? Yes, there is. There's other properties that are going to suit a business like this much better. This is a high volume business. We're talking about queuing of 18 cars on site and possible further queuing into the street. This is going to bring a lot of traffic into this local road. That is significant. And to me, when I look at this, I'm talking about the signs as well. Whether the alleged difficulty was self-created. Well, of course, some of them are going to be directional signs for safety, but others are going to be for advertising. And that's an internal problem. Not an internal problem, but that's an internal measure for Starbucks. That shouldn't become the local residents' issue as to whether they're suddenly looking at commercial signs from their streetscape. They also spoke about, it mentions on there the environment and how it will change that. Obviously, I'm no expert in this area, but knowing the block very well, yes, there are very tall and mature trees on site. And on paper, it sounds good to say that you're going to have 60 feet of those trees remaining. But in this country, for a good portion of the year, those trees are bare. Right now, they stand bare and they're like very tall logs. They're not going to block the sound and they're not going to block the visuals. Why it's blocking now the view into the main busy street of Middle Country Road is because of the fact that there's so many trees going so far back. But when you cut the amount that are going to be cut out, only leaving the 60 feet, you're going to see directly through that the residents are going to suddenly have a significantly changed enjoyment of their property and a significantly changed lifestyle. The traffic as well, the danger of that, I don't think we can get around it here. We're all talking about how this site is going to be bigger and better than St James. But that in itself is the issue, because this site abates local properties, and that's the problem. We have Sonic across the road already. Let's not make this, let's not change this and make it an exponential issue for a local neighbourhood. Two wrongs don't make a right. So let's protect the citizens now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Harold Goldrich, 150 Alexander Avenue. I'm 4 houses south of the subject property. As it is, I have trouble backing out of my driveway because of the traffic. Now, with the shortening timing of the light, I fear that it'll create even more traffic coming southbound, going north to south. And it's making it impossible for me to, and dangerous for me to back out of my driveway. And I was just wondering if the traffic engineer had considered that when he considered shortening the timing of the light. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening.
Hi, Maureen Schwartz, 166 Alexander Avenue. I've lived on that block my entire life. I was raised on that block. My parents bought that house. Yes, it was supposed to be a dead end. I've raised my children in that house. That block means the world to me. I don't ever want to leave. But my life on that block at this point is becoming a nightmare. The traffic is ridiculous. The garbage that I'm picking up in front of my house every single day from Sonic that we didn't want in the first place is horrendous. I was going to bring a garbage bag full of trash that all says Sonic on it, but the stench was too horrible. Now I'm going to be picking up trash that says Starbucks. So my life every day is picking up garbage in front of my house. It's disgusting. We don't want Starbucks there. I don't want Starbucks there, and I know everybody here in this room that lives on that block does not want Starbucks there. There are so many different locations. Yes, let them go to IHOP, where IHOP was. That's commercial. We are residential. They are ruining our property values. They are making life miserable for us. We do not want them there.
My name is Corey J. Schwartz, also 166 Alexander. First of all, it seems the additional construction for the northbound lanes is a lovely thing, but since nothing's being done for the southbound lanes, the backup at that stop sign is going to be insane, besides the number of people that run it, besides the number of people that speed down our block. When my wife and I first got married, a little over 25 years ago, I had trouble pulling out of the driveway because of the Christmas traffic at the mall. We were the only access to the mall. It's nice to see that additional access has been built, but now you're going to be backing the street up again with additional traffic besides the illegal turns coming out of Sonic. Now it's going to be additional traffic coming from Starbucks. I appreciate the work that the traffic engineer put in, and whatever traffic happens on the property is all well and good, has nothing to do with the traffic that we have to contend with on Alexander. So it seems to me that the first thing is, and I appreciate the statements that you started the entire meeting with, is that this seems to be in direct against your consideration, the very first consideration about how it affects the area and the residents of the area. It seems to be going directly against enhancing nearby properties. It is definitely harming our properties.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Wendy Ringheiser. I live on 124 Shenandoah Boulevard in Nesconset.
Wendy, can you just, I'm sorry, can you just spell your last name, please?
Sure. Ringhis like Sam, E-R. One of the things that has not been taken into consideration about the traffic is how you've now, not you, but I think the state, has closed off 347. So our access out from Hillside Avenue onto 347 and to get around or come back in, we can no longer come back in. So all of the traffic where I live is now being pushed on to Alexander Avenue for our egress out and our entrance back in, because we can't get back in on 347. So now the traffic has been added to on Alexander Avenue. So if you do a traffic study, I think you're going to find there is a lot more traffic than there was before. And you definitely have a lot more traffic at Christmas time. So within the next week or so, it's going to really ramp up. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Anyone? Sir? Good evening.
Good evening. How are you tonight? Okay, my name is Kenny Troy, 1 Dover Hill. And we've heard a lot of testimony tonight about a whole bunch of different things, how our ice flows, how the traffic is. But what we didn't hear was the application on the consideration of the factors that this board, by law, according to the town code, must consider in determining the variance application. So I'd like to spend a few minutes to go over that. Okay. The applicant does not meet the first 2 requirements, and I'll discuss that shortly. Furthermore, you will clearly see the applicant has self-created the hardship and the need for these variances. The variants are being requested as a matter of convenience for the applicant and are not necessarily necessary to enable the reasonable use of the property. Starbucks has many different footprints ranging from 500 square feet to 30,000 square feet. The applicant plans to build a 2,548 square foot building and is creating the self-inflicted need for all these variances, all these improvement, roads. I mean, we're gonna have, in essence, a 5-lane road leading into a residential neighborhood. That can't be good. Okay, if we just consider the sign variances, the applicant comes here tonight asking for not 1 variance, not 2, but 8 sign variances. The courts in New York that interprets these things have held that cumulative efforts of all variances together sought by an applicant is a consideration that the Board of Zoning Appeals should take into account in its deliberations. But even if you consider these 11 requests individually rather than collectively, you can see the substantial nature becomes obvious. The code permits 1 ground sign. The applicant is asking for 8. It's a whopping 800% increase. The code permits 40 square foot sign maximum. The applicant is asking for to increase from 40 to 98 feet, a 245% increase. Perhaps the biggest impact to this residential community is the request for the variance to reduce the queue lane to a residential district from 50 to 26 feet. This is nearly half the current standards for the town code. A smaller building would not facilitate such a need. They could reduce their parking spots. I get it, they want to build this grand thing, but they're creating, these are self-inflicted needs for variances. The property could certainly be developed for reasonable use with a smaller building. The need for the variance has been self-created by the applicant due to the large-sized building they would like to build. And again, if they just had a smaller footprint, we wouldn't need all these variances. The applicant is also requesting a parking setback from the property line from 25 feet to 18 feet, a 28% reduction versus the current code. Why is this necessary? It's only necessary because of the size of the building they want to build on this property. If they want to build this big building, go to a property where you don't need all these variances that are going to impact a residential community. As we learned from Sonic, and I laughed over there before, and I apologize if you heard me, but somebody responded to what we're going to hear. What would we hear? I think you asked the question, what would we hear? Well, let me tell you what we're going to hear, because Sonic tells us what we're going to hear. We hear kids in their cars idling during the winter, idling during the summer, playing loud music, and we want to bring that closer. That should not be allowed. Okay, some factors for the board to consider. The first factor is whether there will be an undesirable change produced in the neighborhood by any of the requested variances. Our considerations. The big issue when we heard that tonight from the chatter in the crowd is traffic. The applicant has given us a traffic study that diminishes the amount of traffic, and I know they made this grand scheme here. We're looking at, and I know it's hand-drawn, the new right turning lane will be approximately 40 feet from my living room window. I'm just looking in relation to the electric box that they have the lane going through. Do we really need to do all this to have another Starbucks in a residential area? I don't think so. Okay, I do understand, because I spoke to the building department, they did provide a traffic study, but that traffic study is old. It included Deer Valley Run, Middle Country Road, and Alexander. So I understand you said you didn't get one, but I understand you did get one. If you did get one, please disregard it, because it can't possibly be right. That traffic study would have been based on 3 egress and egresses. Now there's only 1. We talked about, some of my neighbors talked about the right-hand turn. To answer the question, because I did speak to the building department, and you can certainly ask the question again, they will be able to make southbound and northbound turns out of Starbucks. So there are going to be times it's going to be tough to make that left-hand turn. Everybody does it. They do it now out of Sonic. They come into the neighborhood. We all heard they make U-turns. They pull into my driveway making U-turns. There is a bus stop right across the street at that stop sign. All these U-turns and all this extra traffic we're going to bring is highly dangerous to our children in the community, and that needs to be our #1 concern. Okay, let's see. I'm almost done. I know you all want to go home. I want to go home too. All right, the second factor to be considered by this board is determining a variance application is whether the benefit or the intention to be attained by the applicant can be sought by other alternative needs that perhaps don't require variances. Clearly, the applicant could develop the land with less square footage of a building. Again, they have buildings 500 square feet to 30,000 square feet. The big building that they want to put here is what's causing all the problems and the need for all this change. So if the property doesn't fit what you want to build, go somewhere else. Don't make us as residents take it in the shorts because they want to build a building that's too big for the property. You mentioned earlier, we could put an office building there. I'll take it. I'll take it right now. Can I sign up for it? Because we won't have the constant traffic, contrary to what you said. We'd have people coming into the office building working, but we know that's not a good investment right now in this day and age. Office space is not. So, in summary, I believe this discussion clearly shows that there are no unique physical circumstances that would prohibit the development of this property within town code. Therefore, variances are not needed which would impede upon the residents in their community. There is no hardship to the owner except the self-inflicted ones created by trying to build a big building for this property. Currently, this land is undeveloped, so there's no hardship. Change your plans. You don't have to do all this work or move somewhere else. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Anyone else? Good evening.
Hi, how are you? Peter Hussey, 173 Alexander Avenue, Hussey. Pretty much my neighbors pretty much said most of the stuff already. A couple of things, obviously. You know, like you guys said, like the lady said before, you guys have rules and regulations. They're asking for a shit ton of variances, stuff like that. It's kind of ridiculous that they have to ask for so many variances in order to get something built. They should move somewhere else. There's plenty of places, empty places on Smithtown Boulevard or Middle Country Road, empty buildings, which makes Smithtown look pretty embarrassing. The amount of empty buildings that they have already. While they're going to develop on an undeveloped property is kind of ridiculous. Second. Sorry, lost my train of thought. I'll get it in a second. Traffic-wise, like many people have said already, like I said, I live on 173. It takes me literally a minute or 2 minutes to get out of my own driveway. And from just a personal quality of life, it's ridiculous to try to get out of your own driveway for 2 or 3 minutes to back out of your own driveway, during traffic hours and stuff like that. Again, people said the amount of trash, the amount of trash I pick up from Sonic is ridiculous almost every day. Now I'm going to pick up Starbucks guests every day. It's quality of life is just embarrassing. It's not good for the neighborhood, and it's not good for anyone. And the third thing was, that was important too, I forgot. I forgot. Okay, that's it. So, thank you. Sorry about that. But sorry about that. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else? Come on up, please. Good evening.
Good evening. Sue Gilkey, Gilkey. Mine will be brief. I live at 269 Browns Road, so I'm not on Alexander. The changes in the traffic pattern in the area have not, the road, Alexander, has not been maintained. It is in disrepair, and with the changes in the area, it's just going to become worse with Starbucks. So that's it.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else? Come on up, please.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Alex Polanski. That's P-O-L-A-N-S-K-Y. I live at 164 Alexander Avenue. So me and my family moved in a few years ago, and we love the area, but the traffic is already ridiculous. Like a lot of my neighbors said, just to get out of the driveway, sometimes I'm sitting in there for 5-10 minutes, just especially around Christmas time, watching the cars go by, just trying to get out of my own driveway. And of course, a lot of that has to do with where we live, the mall and Sonic and the area up there. And I just feel like Starbucks is going to make it 10 times worse. I mean, I frequent Starbucks, and I know everyone here does, but I certainly don't want them that close to my home. I go to the one on Smithtown Boulevard, and you go there on a Saturday morning, it's backed up. Like, you go this one in St. James, it's backed up. And if it's like that near my house, I don't know how I'm going to get out onto Middle Country Road and go to work every day. It's going to be ridiculous. So one thing I just wanted to point out on their plan, for the queue, if you actually look at Chick-fil-A and Hop Hog and Comac, they did this. You go there and it's pretty backed up there, and it goes and it overflows and it doesn't work. It looks like a great solution, but it's going to create, havoc for our lives. So thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. Who's next? Good evening.
Good evening. Adrian Goldrich, Goldrich, 150 Alexander Avenue. If the Department of Transportation rejected this plan of Starbucks because it's so dangerous and it's not a good idea, why is it okay to approve Alexander Avenue as safe? It is very congested. As they said, people are making illegal turns, left, right, U-turns. And to widen the street just for this, it's not necessary. They can go to a place other than our area, such as IHOP, that is willing to take them. They don't have to start construction from nothing. I feel that they should find a new place to be located, and it's unnecessary to build here. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Good evening.
Good evening. It's almost morning, I think. When the...
Excuse me, can you introduce
Oh, I'm
yourself,
sorry.
please?
Jerry Fink, F-I-N-K, 159 Alexander Avenue. When the traffic study was just presented, there was no mention of how the traffic is coming out of Starbucks will turn. I mean, I see, I believe, 2 lanes. That means that the left-hand lane can also turn left, and the right-hand lane can also turn right. And what about a northbound car coming on Alexander that wants to get into Starbucks during the height of traffic? How will that car be able to make the left turn into Starbucks? All these questions we haven't heard an answer to. So I appreciate if you can find out. Thank you.
You're welcome. Sir?
Hi, good evening. Bill Papaccio, PAPA, CCIO, 21 Yarmouth Lane. Was that 21 Yarmouth Lane? You know, I look at this diagram here, and I listen to the traffic study that they presented, and it seems like it's already proven that it's going to be a traffic nightmare just listening to them, and they're biased to their company to present a traffic study that benefits them. If we did our own traffic study, I think it's going to be a lot worse, right? And I'm looking at these diagrams and all the work that needs to be done, and they know all this work needs to be done to prevent a traffic disaster, which we already have. So why are we entertaining this here? You know, it's a disaster already, and we're going to just make it that much worse for our residents. So that's all I have to say here right now.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else? Once I call Mr. Tramarko back, that's it. So does anybody else want to speak? No? Mr. Tramarko?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I think we've heard it all tonight. I'm not going to belabor it anymore. We've tried to do the best we can with the site. Hopefully, the board will look into it and make a good determination. So thank you.
Well, just a couple of questions people had. Alexander, the southbound lane, that's going to be widened too, right?
Again, for the record, Matt Seckler, Seckler with Stonefield. Chairman, your question is it being widened between Middle Country Road and our site?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
going to be widened. So the southbound lane will be widened and the northbound will be widened.
Correct, yes.
Okay. And then there was another question gentleman just had. Also coming out, you can make a left and a right-hand turn?
Left or right out, left or right in. So you could make either movement going in or out of the site.
Okay. Excuse me. Left or right, they can do either one, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Did I miss anything?
Is there any other questions you want?
One of the questions was, did the traffic engineer consider shortening the timing of the light?
So the signal timing on Middle Country Road is coordinated, meaning that the idea is that you shouldn't be stopping at more than one signal when you kind of hit the right speed, basically till you get to 347. That's kind of where the coordination ends. So all the signals in this corridor need to have the exact same cycle length, which means how long it takes for all the different directions to be served. Just to reiterate, what we are doing is, especially in the morning, reducing the green time for the left turns on Middle Country Road. So turning off of Middle Country Road, we're going to be shrinking the green time. We're going to be increasing the green time for Alexander Avenue in the morning specifically, because there's not a lot of demand in weekday mornings for people turning off of Middle Country Road, but there is demand currently, and we expect with the Starbucks traffic, more demand on Alexander Avenue trying to get onto Middle Country Road. So that's
So-
the change we're making.
I think the concern was that changing that timing, would that exacerbate problems that they're having on Alexander south of this site?
So answer to that, and also answer to another question about the alignment of the two directions on Alexander at the light. One of the reasons why we've worked with the DOT to create what's called split phasing, meaning that only one direction goes at a time. So Alexander Avenue northbound will go, then Alexander Avenue southbound will actually help with some of the issues that they have getting out of their driveways, because basically the southbound Alexander traffic will not be coming through immediately when the northbound Alexander traffic is going through. So it will create some kind of gaps. Again, I can't promise it's not going to be, turn back the clock to 1960 here in terms of getting out of your driveway, but that should help with it, and that also helps with the misalignment because you don't have the cars going through on Alexander Avenue at the same time, where, again, because there's a slight misalignment, the DOT won't let those two directions go at once.
Thank you.
Are you done, Mr. Tramoka? You're done, okay. Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Thank you.
I know. I gotta make sure I don't give it.
And that concludes our meeting for tonight.